we are shown a girl with beautiful long red hair. This is our heroine. As she passed the maids, they immediately began to whisper about how strange it was that a person could change so much overnight. Maybe she was such a noble woman that she could do nothing but sleep luxuriously, said the maids. Maybe the rumors are true. The maids were talking about the rumor that Lady Ayla, the main character's name, had gone completely mad. The girl came to the main character Claude's office to tell him that she wanted a divorce from him. When he asked what she was saying, Ayla replied that they needed a divorce because there was no love in their marriage, so there was no point in continuing it. Hearing no response, Ayla stood up and said that silence was a sign of consent, and she was about to leave, but Claude abruptly approached her and stopped her. Claude said that she seemed to have misunderstood something. He said he was not going to let her go. The guy threateningly said that even after death, he would never let her leave him. Creepy guy. So Ayla returned to her room and sat tiredly on the floor, recalling his gaze. That seemed to scream, make a mistake, die, and she sadly asked why he didn't want a divorce. She thought all her actions were simply useless, and a week ago, she was a normal university student. And ordinary, who was celebrating the end of the semester drinking quite a bit with friends, and the one who was leaving hit her hard. That's how she ended up in the body of this girl, Ayla Reinhardt, a side character in a romance fantasy novel. In this book, the girl Ayla was doomed to a tragic death, which was not her fault. The girl faced such a tragic death at such a young age, and it was her husband's fault. Who arranged the betrayal? Ayla, the daughter of a viscount, was forced to marry Duke Claude Reinhardt to pay off her father's debt. The reason Claude married Ayla is very simple. She will not contradict him. He just needed a bride from a weak family. Asking her if she was happy in this marriage, a million times no. Claude paid the debt, but left Ayla alone on their first anniversary. They didn't even have their wedding night, as if he was avoiding Ayla. Ayla's husband, Claude, seemed not only that, but he was an extremely heartless person, who gathered troops to fight the monsters, but actually did it for the rebellion. However, the uprising was completely suppressed. Claude tried to lead the detachment to the palace, but the first prince, the main character of the novel, realized it in time. He decided to strike back and execute the entire Reinhardt family for treason. Due to Claude's rebellion, Ayla was beheaded. She was never mentioned again in the book, and it turned out that she was Ayla Reinhardt. It was her husband who planned the rebellion. Why should I die now because of his fault? She remembered him telling her that he wouldn't let her go even after death, and Ayla thought about how she could divorce him before he committed treason. Ayla didn't understand why Claude suddenly became so fond of her. Until now, he hadn't been crazy about Ayla. Then the maid, without knocking, said she was entering her chambers. Ayla thought this was quite strange, because maids shouldn't do that. The maid entered her room and immediately began to scold her, asking why she skipped dinner without telling her. She continued that the Duke asked why his wife skipped a meal. The maid said she was already exhausted and ordered her to stop behaving like that. The maid continued to insult her shamelessly, calling her a failed writer, and said that they didn't like her anyway. Even the maid looks down on her. It is impossible to imagine how much Ayla suffered while living here. But now, she decided not to tolerate this anymore. She stood up, approached her, and asked her name. The maid said her name, Jane, and demanded an apology. But she wasn't the same Ayla who tolerated such antics from insolent maids. Ayla took the vase next to her and threw it to the floor towards Jane, fragments, and water scattered all over the floor. Then, Ayla cunningly said that apparently the vase slipped out of her hands by accident, because she was surprised by her brazen behavior, and then asked her what she thought if the lady should apologize to the maid. Ayla decided to take this opportunity to show her superiority, and continued to wonder if the maid should continue to act rudely when she doesn't even know what she's talking about. She decided that she wouldn't allow something like this to happen to anyone. Ayla said the maid should be punished for insulting her mistress. Ayla told her that she had been fired because the only thing she could do was take out the trash. And it wasn't profitable to keep such a maid. It would be better to improve your reputation than to endure these humiliations. It would be even better if bad rumors spread. The worse her reputation, the faster she and Claude would divorce. Ayla decided to try to get rid of her responsibilities and just have fun. 3 days later, the maids complained that their mistress was strange and wondered why the Duke married her. They shamelessly said that she did nothing yesterday and just lay around. And they said how she could act like she was the mistress of this house. Apparently, they missed the fact that she really was the mistress of the house. Just like Claude, Ayla was lying on her bed and using the bell called the maid. Ayla noticed that she was seeing this maid for the first time and asked her name. The maid bowed and said she was only hired since Jane was fired. Her name was Lena. Ayla said that maybe it wouldn't be for long, but asked them to take care of her. Lena misunderstood her and began to say that she would never violate her mistress's orders, and that she wanted to serve her for as long as possible. Although Ayla meant that she intended to leave here as soon as possible, she wasn't going to fire her so soon. Ayla ordered some snacks to be brought here, and she also needed a catalog. She would like to do some shopping. Ayla didn't care about spending, since it wasn't her money. You can't be a villain without luxuries. She lay on the bed eating delicious food and thought it was time for Claude to come. And right at that moment, the maid approached her and told her that the Duke wanted to see her. He needed to tell her something. Ayla was happy because she thought it was time for a divorce. Ayla thought Claude had called her to reprimand her for her extravagance and chase her away. When Lena ran up to her and asked if she was sure she was going alone, she of course replied that she was sure, and entering Claude's office, she said she heard he was looking for her. When Ayla asked him why he was looking for her, he replied that he needed to tell her something. Ayla was already expecting the word divorce when he asked if she was ready for the banquet. The first prince's banquet would be in 10 days, and he asked if she was ready to go to the palace with him. This was not discussed in detail, but the story included a banquet for the first prince's birthday. And 6 months later, Claude revealed himself. And what will they do now with this banquet? It seems he is not going to kick her out yet. She hoped to get a divorce and was annoyed that she couldn't get it this time. So she asked him if he was crazy about her. Ayla said that everyone complains about her extravagance, a wife who carelessly spends her husband's money. She bought a lot of expensive jewelry without his permission. She wanted to anger him with this, but he just said that she really called him wasteful, and added that she should write whatever she wanted and he would have it. It turned out that he didn't care how much she spent because he was rich, and she was surprised by his calmness. And she wondered how much money he had, and she decided to try to anger him in another way, and said that lately she hadn't been fulfilling her duties. But Claude replied that he couldn't do it if he didn't want to. Then he said that he wouldn't force her to work, but added that she should stop talking nonsense about divorce. As a result, she still couldn't get a divorce today. He didn't even say the word, and she decided that only one path remained for her: escape. Nothing would work if Claude found out, but without his knowledge, she could escape. Ayla changed her clothes and wondered why he didn't want a divorce if he didn't even enter his wife's bedroom. Although that is even an advantage, she thought that if she sold her clothes and jewelry, she could cover all travel expenses. Afterwards, Ayla tore down the curtains, tied them, and then tied them to the balcony, hoping it would hold them. Lena said that the guard usually changes at this time, and Ayla decided to take this opportunity to escape quickly. But before she could reach the ground, the curtain tore and Ayla fell. And when she opened her eyes, she saw that Claude had saved her. So Ayla asked him how long he had been there, and Claude calmly replied that he had been here since the moment she opened the balcony. Well, at least he caught her in his arms when she fell. She could be grateful for that, but asked why he didn't say anything if he saw everything. Claude replied that he was afraid she would fall. He did it thinking that no one could see her, and that in such a situation he couldn't speak. Then Ayla asked him to let her go, but Claude said he wouldn't let her go until he was sure she was really okay. And he asked her what she was trying to do. She thought that if she told the truth, he would definitely kill her, so she replied that she wanted to go for a walk. But then she decided that nothing would change, even if she lied, and honestly said that she wanted to run away from here because she didn't want to live here anymore. Claude paused for a moment and asked if she really hated him that much. Ayla wondered why Claude, with a serious face, looked like that. Ayla was confused and said it's not that she hates him. She just wants a divorce. Ayla wants to avoid a tragic death. Claude said her legs could have been broken. He asked her to stop hurting herself and asked if she really wanted to run away that much. Ayla replied positively and added that she would do it as soon as possible. Claude just said he would take her back to the bedroom. He did so, placing Ayla on the bed. She was about to leave, but Ayla stopped him by saying that their conversation wasn't over yet. She thanked him for settling her father's debt, even if it was a forced marriage. And he wasn't a faithful husband. Ayla continued by saying that he constantly avoids her and prefers war. She decided it would be better to use examples. That is, they never slept together. They have separate bedrooms. Moreover, before her divorce request, he didn't even look at her, and they only spoke a couple of times. Claude got annoyed and said that she was driving him crazy, because everything was a misunderstanding. Ayla replied that she really wanted to end this and again asked for a divorce. Claude asked to give him another chance and said he wanted to fix everything. If she doesn't like a loveless marriage and he loves her, then he won't want a divorce. Ayla didn't expect Claude to start talking about love. He is trying to stop the divorce by talking about love. Maybe this is even an opportunity. Then, she said that the idea sounded interesting and agreed to give him a chance. If he made her fall in love with him, then they wouldn't divorce. She decided that if she took advantage of it correctly, she might divorce Claude. That's why she set conditions for him. She stated that he had 1 month for all this to make her fall in love. Ayla said that if he succeeded, she would not divorce him. But if her heart remained unchanged, then he must promise her that he would grant her a divorce. She thought that even if there was more time, she would never fall in love with Claude. Choosing between him and life, she would choose the latter. And Claude accepted that condition. There were only 5 months left, so she might as well spend one, since she certainly wasn't going to fall in love with Claude. The next morning, Ayla noticed that carriages were still arriving, but it seemed like nothing was planned today. Maybe someone had arrived. Then Lena approached her, and Ayla told her that she noticed so many carriages had arrived today, and asked her if anything had happened. Lena replied that they were gifts from the Duke for her. Ayla sat down, and Lena began to comb her hair, saying that today she would try to improve her image. She heard that they have a lot of jewelry and accessories. Lena said that there was a diamond there that belonged to the princess of a state that was defeated 100 years ago. They say there is nothing more valuable in the empire. It is beyond her imagination. He is trying to buy her love. But this doesn't bother her. Money certainly cannot buy love. Ayla thought the Duke was too naive. This is the famous Princess Shy Diamond. Now it's clear why this diamond is so expensive. Lena said there were still many gifts left, but unlike Lena, Ayla was calm and said she needed to meet Claude. Lena then thought she was going to thank him for the gifts, but Ayla said she wanted to return the diamond, that it didn't suit her. Ayla confidently entered Claude's office and told him she wanted to talk about something with him. She immediately said he was being dishonest, and Claude asked what exactly she meant. Claude said that if there was any problem with the diamond, then he could buy another one. But this only angered Ayla, and she said she asked him to win her heart. Ayla asked him if he was trying to buy her love with money. Then Claude asked her if those were her sincere feelings, she wouldn't accept it, even if he said he wanted to use them to show her his feelings for her. Ayla replied that she didn't need him to show his feelings that way, although she found it hard to say no to that shining stone. Hearing this, Claude decided he would just throw the diamond out the window. But Ayla stopped him and told him she would accept the gift. Claude gave her the diamond and said he would never dare to buy her heart with money. And he gave it to her, thinking it would suit her. Ayla thought she shouldn't have angered him over something so small, and when she was about to leave, Claude asked her what kind of gifts she liked. She replied that if he was so curious, she would like the gift to have a lot more feelings. Duke Reinhard is incredibly wealthy, and his influence surpasses that of the imperial family. But he knows that all these things are meaningless. At age 15, gold was useless when his mother died of poisoning. At age 16, the influence of his father being killed right in front of him disappeared forever. Therefore, he didn't understand why he needed all this. Claude sadly thought that he couldn't even protect his loved ones. Claude sadly thought that everything he loved was already dead. After these incidents, his goals completely changed. Having no opportunity to protect what was dear to him, he decided not to value anything. And since Ayla's family had a debt, they were the same age and Claude had nothing against her family. That's why he decided to marry her. He thought he wasn't greedy yet. At least Ayla wouldn't leave him. He couldn't believe she was afraid of him. Even though he himself kept his distance, what else could be expected? On their wedding day, Ayla was afraid of him, and when he asked if he should take her hand, she didn't answer. The butler asked if it would be okay to miss the wedding night, and Claude replied that it would be better for her to rest. And after that, he never saw Ayla again. After all, she felt horror when he paid attention to her. He couldn't understand why she suddenly became a completely different person. And remembering how she said she tried to escape, he got angry and said he didn't want to lose anyone else. Claude thought it was all his fault, and it's good that he knows it now. Because he can fix everything, this month he decided to treat her better. Then Butler Henry entered the room, brought tea, and said that she was back at work, and she had missed a meal. Claude asked Henry if not everyone is the same, if not all people want the same things. He kept asking if he had ever seen someone who didn't like jewelry and luxury items. Apart from that, What kind of gift could show sincerity? Henry replied that people always want to get another person's heart, but the lady wants to get the Duke's heart. And then Claude said, if she really wants to have his heart, then he always gave it to her. He just did it his way. Henry, a little worried, said that their relationship was not close, and that my lord could sometimes spend time with his wife. Claude asked him if he spent time with her, she would understand that he had her heart for her, and Henry suggested that he start touching her a little instead of being rough. But Claude asked if casual contact wouldn't be considered too rough, and Henry told him to start with something simple, like shaking hands. Hearing this, Claude stood up and said he had a great idea, and thanking him for the advice. He decided to start training immediately. Claude asked Henry to tell Ayla that he would spend all his time with her, just the two of them. Henry noticed that it was too late and that they could do it tomorrow, but Claude insisted. And then Lena ran to Ayla and told her that she needed to get ready quickly. Ayla calmly asked what could happen tonight, and if the dress she ordered this week had arrived. But Lena interrupted her by telling her that the Duke said he would come to her room right away. She decided that she wanted to spend the first night with her. Ayla was not happy about this, and even got angry, thinking he was trying to get her in such a strange way. Since money didn't work, her imagination had already started to imagine Claude coming and immediately undressing to show his heart. She imagined him saying that was the only way to show his feelings. But then she pulled herself together and told Lena that there was no need to prepare anything, and that she would take care of everything herself. Ayla got angry and already started threatening him, thinking that he wouldn't leave everything like this. And then Claude arrived. Claude entered her room and said he had come here to spend time with her. Despite his schedule, Ayla shouted that he must be hungry, but Claude didn't understand what she was talking about, and said he had eaten well a long time ago. When Claude said he wanted to give everything today and tried to touch her, she hit him and told him not to touch her, but it was only her who was suffering, not him. Ayla thought his body looked more like a stone, which is strange because he is always malnourished and, moreover, he works constantly. Claude didn't understand why she was angry and said he left work just to see her. Ayla replied that nobody would like someone breaking into their bedroom to take care of the first night, without considering their feelings. At this, Claude himself was embarrassed and asked her what she meant by the first night. And then he added that there had been a total misunderstanding. He said he had never thought of such a thing, and that he just wanted to show how much he cared about her. Then Ayla asked him what he was doing there so late. Claude replied that every moment was precious, and that he was trying to show that he was willing to give up everything for her, to show that no matter how busy he was willing to do anything for her. Then Ayla realized that she had truly misunderstood everything, and wondered why he expressed his feelings in such a strange way. Claude said he only bothered her again, and apologized for disturbing her so late, and that he was about to leave. But Ayla stopped him, although she herself didn't understand why she needed this, because it was beneficial for her that he was doing such a poor job with their arrangement. Still, she said she planned to go for a walk, and that, if he wanted, they could walk together. So they did. Ayla noticed that due to his long legs, he walked too fast, and Claude asked her where she wanted to go. Ayla replied that she didn't want to go anywhere, she was just walking, and then Claude suggested walking in the garden, because it's nice to walk there. Ayla liked this idea, and they went to the garden. Entering the garden, Ayla saw how beautiful it was. She didn't even know such a place existed on this estate. Then she looked at Claude and thanked him for bringing her here, and said it was very nice to walk here. When Claude kept looking at her silently, Ayla asked him if he was okay, because he didn't look well. Then she touched him and said he looked like ice melting under the burning sun. Ayla thought he looked like he could disappear at any moment. But not receiving an answer, she turned around and said it was a great place. Ayla didn't expect Claude to like gardening. Claude replied that this place was created entirely by his mother. In the novel, Claude's mother was poisoned by someone. This happened a year before the death of his father, who literally went mad trying to find the traitors. But he failed and died at the hands of an assassin, and the young Claude, who had lost his parents, became the new duke, after which he himself tried to find the man who killed his parents. It must have been an incredibly difficult time for Claude, Ayla thought, so she apologized for mentioning it, but Claude replied that it was already a thing of the past anyway, and that there was no need to apologize. Ayla asked him if he came here often. Claude replied that he didn't like flowers, and only came here when he thought of his mother. Claude said he carefully takes care of this garden, since this place was dear to his mother, And then Ayla plucked a flower and gave it to Claude. She said she understood that he didn't like flowers, but still asked him to accept it. Because when you see something beautiful, it becomes better. Claude took the flower and said she was right, and added that the flower was beautiful. Ayla wondered why he called it beautiful without even looking at it. Then Claude asked her if she liked flowers. She replied that she liked them because they were very beautiful. She liked everything beautiful. And then she realized that she had been staring at Claude for too long, and thought that she must have been seduced by his beautiful face. Even realizing that she was already staring at him, she didn't stop, although she understood it was time to stop. And Claude took a rose growing nearby. He made a ring with it and put it on Ayla's hand. Claude remembered that Henry had told him that it was important to create relationships through light touches. Then he pulled her towards him and asked her to remember that moment, and secretly put another rose in her hair. Ayla opened her eyes, and Claude said that now she looked even better. However, when he pulled her towards him, Ayla thought he was going to kiss her. And then Ayla said it was time for them to go back, because she decided that Claude was dangerous, and returned to her place. Ayla was hungry and called Lena, who kept looking at her. And then Ayla asked why she was looking at her for so long. Lena got embarrassed and said it was nothing, that the lady was very beautiful today. Ayla didn't understand why she suddenly started flattering her so much, although if you think about it, Ayla's face is really cute. And then she said that this body is always beautiful. She herself thought that she was probably too narcissistic. When she gathered her hair and the flower fell out, then she understood what Lena was talking about, and remembering how she walked with a calm face in front of the maids and got embarrassed. Ayla remembered how Claude acted in the garden and thought he was too romantic. She thought that, in any case, she wouldn't see him again this month, and the next day, Ayla still came to Claude's office. All night, she thought about how nicely they spent the evening together, and Ayla decided that she needed to find out why he kept behaving differently from the original. Because if the flow of the story was interrupted, her life was in danger. And just as she was about to leave, the door opened and Duke Henry appeared in front of the door, and asked her what she was doing here. Henry said he had been working for the Duke since he started fighting, and that he had always respected her, so he asked her to call him by his name. Ayla asked if the Duke was working, and Henry replied that he was resting now, so she could enter. Then he opened the door and saw that he was in the middle of work, so he said he was just lost. She decided to leave immediately, but Claude approached her and stopped her, telling her he was free, and that she could stay. Claude clarified if she was looking for him, and if so, why did she decide to leave? But Ayla lied again, and said she was just lost. And after a brief silence, Ayla said it was better for her to go back, but Claude asked her to stay. Ayla looked around and saw that the table was full of books and lists, and then said that he had a lot of work, and that she didn't want to interfere. And when Claude said it didn't bother him, Ayla replied that then she could come in for a cup of tea. They sat down, and Claude started preparing tea. Ayla was very surprised that he was calmly preparing tea. She noticed that the teapot looked very small in his hands. Ayla remembered how he picked flowers for her in the garden and secretly put one in her hair. Claude was unexpectedly kind. Claude noticed how Ayla was looking at him and asked if she was somehow preparing tea, and Ayla replied that he should serve it himself. Then Claude asked her if she really thought he had no manners. Ayla said she didn't think so. She was just happy to be drinking tea prepared by him. Claude brought the cup closer to her. Ayla took it and drank a little. She thought the calendula tea was very hot and the aroma so pleasant. While drinking tea, Claude said that she had changed a lot. Before, she didn't even want to look him in the eye. And then he asked what she was really like. Well, her attitude really changed. Compared to Ayla in the novel, it's not surprising that he noticed. Ayla frowned slightly and asked him if he didn't like that she had changed so much. But Claude replied that he liked this side even more. To be honest, he wanted her to be like this before. Ayla said that a whole year had already passed, and that, of course, she had changed, especially in such an environment. Claude asked what she was talking about, and Ayla replied that everyone, even the roomers, looked down on her. They didn't perceive her as the mistress of the house. Naturally, she had changed. Claude didn't know and was very angry. He asked her if they really looked down on her all this time. Ayla didn't expect him to be so angry, and Claude asked her why she fired Jane. It turns out he knew about her firing. She replied that Jane treated her too arrogantly, but now everything is fine. The new maid treats her well. Claude told her he would change everything. When she left, Claude continued muttering that the maids had become so lazy, and how dare they treat his wife like that. Butler Henry came and asked if he had called him, But before Henry could finish speaking, Claude ordered everyone to be fired. Henry was very surprised and asked if he was serious in saying this. Claude replied that he should only keep the minimum necessary, and that he should find out who disrespected the mistress, and if he finds new ones, he must train them personally. Claude said he doesn't want even one to disrespect the Reinhardts. The next day, early in the morning, there was a lot of noise, but Ayla somehow didn't mind, and continued lying in her bed. Then Lena approached her and asked if she was going to the first prince's birthday banquet, so she should start getting ready. Lena said she had to choose a matching outfit and jewelry, but Ayla lazily replied that she could choose whatever she thought would suit her. The first prince's birthday, he was the main male character of this book, the one who will visit the Reinhardt family and cut off Ayla's head. So Ayla was definitely not looking forward to this guy's birthday, and sadly told Lena that she had plenty of clothes. Any would do. Besides, there is another major problem. The other nobles at the banquet, Ayla's reputation is not the best. Not only were the servants treating Ayla badly, but she didn't understand why they treated her that way, since she wasn't the type to waste her family's money. If she had been on good terms with Claude, no one would have dared to speak of the Duchess like that. Even the flowers on the road know that she didn't have her first night. A girl from a modest family, whom not even her own husband loves. She was ideal for that kind of harassment, although not. In fact, this is great, because she is no longer the same Ayla. Bite her, and she will immediately bite you back. She needs to step over everyone and shine brighter than others. Now no one will dare to look down on her. Ayla hoped that the first prince was an honest man. In the novel, he was bright and sociable. Thanks to this, he could easily catch up with the heroine, Edith Nevelin, although it is unlikely that she would meet them in person. She went out late. Ayla thought she needed to go to the store and then go to bed. And when Ayla returned to her chambers, she was surprised. The room was strewn with flowers. Ayla approached the beautiful flowers and noticed that they looked like new, not withered at all, because they had gold dust on them. The book said this was a sign of magic. If so, were all the flowers in the room really enchanted? Ayla was surprised that he used magic so they wouldn't wilt. These kinds of things are probably very expensive. Ayla looked at the flowers and thought how she could do something like this. Claude, who never went to Ayla's bedroom, suddenly appeared at her door with a bouquet of flowers. He approached her and handed her a bouquet, saying that she wanted something from his heart, and not just jewelry. Ayla was surprised when she remembered, and Claude said that he remembered her talking about her love for flowers, so he thought they would be a wonderful gift. If she had known that everything would turn out this way, she would have stayed silent. Claude asked her if she didn't like it. Ayla replied that she was grateful, but that one flower would have been enough. Claude asked what that meant. One thing. He would never give this to his wife. Ayla thought how he came up with everything. Apparently, he is doing his best to make her stay with him. Ayla said she was only allowed to go to the garden, but this is too much. Claude approached her and plucked a petal from her hair. Ayla was very embarrassed. Then there was an awkward silence. Ayla wondered why he didn't leave. She wasn't going to sleep here, and at that moment, Claude wished her good night and left. Ayla sat tiredly on her bed and leaning back on the pillows, said that Claude's behavior was very different from what she saw in the book. Time flew by, and the first prince's birthday arrived. Lena helped Ayla change clothes, happy that the lady was more beautiful than usual. Ayla's dress really suited her very well, a long blue dress that emphasized her beauty. And it looked like Ayla was a saint. She thanked the maids for their work, and they all replied at once that they were delighted to help her. Ayla was surprised that the maids suddenly became kind to her, so she asked all the maids except Lena to leave. Lena was already scared and asked if she had done something wrong. Ayla immediately told her that she was not going to scold her, that she had a question for her. Why had the maid's attitude towards her changed so dramatically? Lena said that the Duke punished and fired everyone who ignored her, so now there is a minimum number of people in the castle. Ayla understood what the commotion on the estate was about before. Lena said she heard they would find others soon, and thanks to Ayla, she wasn't fired. So Ayla thanked her for telling her everything and prepared to leave. As she went out into the hallway, Claude appeared in front of her, wearing a blue suit that matched Ayla's outfit. Ayla thought he would be the first to go down. Then Claude extended his hand to accompany her. She took Claude's hand and thought she couldn't believe Claude would accompany her. Claude asked her why she was looking at him like that, and Ayla, embarrassed, replied that it suited him very well. And Claude, calling her his beloved, said that it suited her very well too. Ayla said she heard he fired all the servants, and Ayla asked him if he did it for her. Claude replied that these idiots didn't know their place. Ayla then said that it wasn't necessary to go that far, but Claude replied that he wouldn't allow anyone to look down on his wife. Once in the carriage, Ayla asked what this crown prince was like. Claude asked why she was suddenly asking about another boy. Ayla replied that she was interested because they were going to his birthday. Claude said he doesn't like his wife asking about another boy while he is around. Ayla was surprised by this reaction. Is he really jealous? Ayla told him she was serious, and Claude replied that he was serious too. This completely confused Ayla. She thought maybe he was pretending to be jealous because she only asked him a simple question. However, Claude finally replied that the crown prince was not the most pleasant person. An unpleasant person, that's all he can say. Maybe Claude is against the imperial family. That's why he thinks that of the crown prince. Ayla just said she understood everything, and Claude asked her if she had never met him before. She replied that she saw him only for a second, and then from afar, and Claude said that, when she saw him, she would understand everything. What kind of person was he? Claude said with a suspicious smile, but Ayla began to calm down so as not to get tense prematurely. So they arrived at the imperial castle, and Claude went out first. Ayla thought she wouldn't like to fall while getting down, but that's exactly what happened. But Claude caught Ayla in his arms and asked if she was okay. Ayla quickly blushed, so she got up as best she could and thanked him for picking her up, and told him to hurry up. She said they were already late, and they quickly entered the castle and were immediately introduced. People immediately started avoiding Ayla, and she decided to simply ignore them. And then His Majesty Emperor Charles and the young son of the Empire, His Highness the First Prince J. Spray, the main character of the book. Ayla noticed that he looked tired, which was strange because in the book he had a fiery character. And the prince constantly mocked Claude, but it seems he was mistaken. And His Highness, raising his glass, said he was grateful to everyone who attended the banquet in honor of the prince's birthday. Then he paused for the prince to add his gratitude to his speech, but the prince continued sitting sadly in silence. Therefore, Carl directly told him to say something. Then the prince stood up and said that no one needed loud and complex speeches, and that no one listened to them. Then he took the bottle of wine in his hands and drank it. Ayla was surprised that the protagonist was acting like a complete idiot. Ayla wondered why he was drinking wine from his throat and what the female character would think of him. Realizing her reaction, Claude told Ayla that now she seemed to believe him. While Carl ordered the banquet to begin, Claude looked at the others with disgust, thinking they were trying to get close to him to gain benefits. He still couldn't get used to it. That's why he hated such events so much. Ayla suggested that Claude talk to someone, because many people want and expect this, but Claude said he didn't need it. Claude looked at Ayla and thought that before she didn't even look at him. And if he had known she had changed so much, he would have gone to her a long time ago. He decided not to do something he might regret later, and said he preferred to spend time with her. Ayla wondered why he was suddenly saying those things, if he was trying to change everything during that banquet. And while Claude was thinking about what Ayla thought, Carl approached them and greeted the Duke. Claude bowed and said it was an honor to meet the Emperor, and Charles told him he didn't need to be so formal. Then Carl greeted the Duchess and asked how she was. Ayla also greeted him and said she felt great. Carl told Claude he would give him a reward for defeating Marmal in Stan. Claude replied that it was nothing, and Carl convinced him that it wouldn't be so hard to get official recognition. And then the Emperor asked Claude to speak with him alone. Ayla thought that even Claude had difficulty resisting the Emperor's order. However, unexpectedly for Ayla, Claude told the Emperor that if he wanted to talk, he could do it here. Ayla was worried that this might be considered disrespect to the Emperor, and she said that she had the honor of speaking with His Majesty, so he should not refuse. She told him not to pay attention to her, and when he finally left, Ayla sighed in relief, thinking that she almost died prematurely. And then a girl approached her. She addressed her as Lady, not Duchess. Ayla immediately realized that she would bother her. Ayla immediately moved away and said that if it was over, she would leave. And the girl started screaming that she dared not say such things to her. This surprised Ayla because she had never said anything like that, and she thought the girl was probably upset because the always quiet Ayla gave an answer. The girl said that they knew each other before marriage, and she talks to her like that. So Ayla asked who she was. The girl said her name Mariana and started screaming that she was probably proud of being a duchess who didn't even have her wedding night. People would laugh if they found out. Ayla calmly called her and said she understood now why she couldn't remember her. She said the girl looked so boring that she didn't deserve a place in her memory. She probably erased her from there. Then a boy approached them and asked what was going on and why Lady Define was crying. The boy started screaming that, of course, he regretted that she didn't have a wedding night. But why get angry at a lady who came only with good intentions? They were both crazy. They dared to mention their wedding night in a public place. These bastards dared to insult her. Then she decided it was worth responding to them and recounted how Albert dared to say such a thing to Dahlia's face. That is, to her, Ayla was starting to get very angry. Everyone looks down on Ayla in these situations. She ordered him to apologize immediately or Duke Reinhardt would punish him. Then the boy bowed and said that he shouldn't have shouted like that. And Ayla replied that she shouldn't have done this either, taking a glass of wine and drinking it over his head. She was satisfied with her action. While Albert was screaming how she could behave like that, Ayla said that seeing his shameless face, she thought he deserved it. This happened because Albert shouted at the Duchess of the Reinhardt house and also mentioned the wedding night. Suddenly, loud laughter was heard in the crowd. Ayla turned around and saw that it was the prince. He approached her and applauded her while saying she was incredible. Ayla thought it would be better to leave this situation before it got worse. And the prince asked her if she was good at getting people wet, and then advised her to just hit him on the ear. Ayla apologized for bothering him, and the prince said he thought he would die of boredom. But thanks to her, he laughed a lot. The prince said he thought this person looked stingy, took the bottle, and poured it over Albert's head. Although everyone was surprised, the prince calmly told the boy that he was behaving so brazenly towards the Duchess, so he was not going to forgive everything. Ayla was very surprised, and not to say in a good way. She thought that in the book this guy was very friendly. The crown prince was never interested in Ayla. In the novel, he only saw her once, and then finally executed her. Only one woman was interested in him, the protagonist Edith, and at that moment, the prince grimly ordered the boy to disappear, because he was spoiling the atmosphere with his appearance. The prince asked her if her name was Ayla, and she replied yes. Ayla herself did not expect him to remember her name. The boy said he wondered who the Iron Wall would marry, and added that Ayla is quite funny. Iron Wall is probably talking about Claude, but in the book these two were not close. Then the doors opened, and the Emperor and Claude returned to the hall. Claude immediately began to search for Ayla in the crowd, and the prince apparently decided to mock him. And approaching Ayla, he said he hoped for another encounter. Let's go back to the past. When Claude first came out with the Emperor, Claude thought all this time that, since the servants looked down on Ayla, the nobles did too. He thought he needed to be with her, and wanted to run away with Ayla right now to make sure no one hurt her. And then, the Emperor said that the entire empire had risen thanks to him, and no one could compare to him. But Claude said that everything was thanks to the Emperor, not him. And then, the Emperor told him not to be modest, because he had done so much during the entire period of the war that the empire needed such people. Added Karl. Suddenly, the Emperor began to behave strangely, and said that, unfortunately, most people do not do what they should do. Argue with him and continue doing what they want. He is talking about aristocrats. At this moment, the empire is divided into two, imperialists and aristocrats. And the emperor hates the mere idea of control by powerful nobles. But while the imperialists do nothing, the aristocrats focus on maintaining and increasing their power. So he wants to recruit Claude. Someone who supports neutrality will join the emperor. Then Charles asked why not be next to him. Claude's hypothesis was confirmed. Claude thanked him for his trust and said he wished to dedicate himself completely to the empire. In fact, he did not want to side with the imperialists or the aristocrats. Karl began to say that if he thought so, he should continue to support the entire empire. And suddenly, someone ran towards the emperor. It was one of the servants. He began to say that the crown prince had done something, and Claude immediately worried that this bastard had done something to Ayla. The butler said that the prince splashed one of the guests with his liquor, and the emperor immediately decided to go to him. Claude found Ayla. He approached her. He had already started threatening the boy, prince or not. If he touched his wife, he couldn't escape his wrath. Ayla herself got angry at the prince when he finally left. She thought that the main character could be so unpleasant, and managed to regret coming to this event. Only now did she realize how Claude approached her. It seemed, to put it mildly, terrifying. And Ayla directly asked him why his gaze was so severe. Suddenly, Ayla felt that he was not the only one looking at her so threateningly. And turning around, she noticed that a girl was looking at her. This girl turned out to be the main female protagonist, And of course, if the crown prince was interested in another, she would get jealous. Ayla only got more annoyed. She thought that if you interested the crown prince, you would get a jealous princess. And then Claude approached her and held out his hand. Ayla thought he was a better option than the first prince, or the heroine looking at him. But it turned out that he looked at her with the same look as the princess, and Claude said that he heard there had been a quarrel. Ayla replied that it was okay, but Albert and Mariana had suffered a lot of ego damage. Claude continued to worry and asked if that guy had done something. Claude was referring to the first prince. Ayla got scared and covered her mouth so that no one would suddenly hear her words, because that guy was a prince, and such speeches could anger him. Then she replied quietly that nothing happened between her and the prince, and Claude asked why she was with him then. Ayla thought he was annoyed that she was with the first prince. Apparently, he was really jealous. Ayla looked at the girl again, then at Claude, and thought they had the same look. But Claude couldn't be jealous of her, and she replied that His Highness was just helping her with her problems. Claude asked her if she had problems with the nobles, and Ayla replied that there was nothing serious. Claude said he shouldn't have left her here alone, and apologized for not being there during the difficult moments. Then he said the ball would end soon, and suggested returning home. Ayla was completely shocked when the ruthless Claude suddenly apologized to him. A sudden apology, a good reason to be surprised. They finally returned home, and Ayla immediately fell onto her bed from exhaustion. She still couldn't get over Claude's strange behavior. The first prince, who suddenly became interested in her, Edith's jealousy, and also Claude with his unexpectedly affectionate behavior. Ayla wondered why they were acting that way, but decided to focus. And maybe if she stayed quiet, all the weirdness would disappear. So she fell asleep. In the morning, Henry approached her and gave her a letter, 2 not-so-important ones, but one quite interesting one. Ayla was curious about this important letter. The letter was written by Albert and Mariana, in which they wrote how wrong they were, and that they sincerely apologized. Ayla said it was quite strange. Ayla asked Henry why they wrote that letter, and Henry replied that they probably wanted to side with her, because when the Duke found out what happened, he pressured those who opposed her. The Duke cut off all ties with Albert's family. Henry told Ayla not to worry. Most aristocrats would follow the Duke, and no one would dare to work more with his family. Ayla asked if this was too much, and Henry replied with a smile that they would be completely destroyed. Ayla was surprised that he could say something like that so calmly, and even with a smile. Well, Ayla thought they deserve it. Albert seems to be the one defending himself, and then she asked what happened to Mariana. Henry replied that the Duke told his family everything, and the lady would be punished. There would be no more problems with her. Then she asked if she could answer them, but Ayla ordered them to simply burn them. And the other letter turned out to be an invitation to a tea party. An invitation from the princess that was worth accepting. Ayla thought it was the perfect place to meet the first prince, and asked if she couldn't go there. Henry honestly replied that it was better to accept the invitation. Ayla herself understood. After all, she is an imperial princess. In the empire, a princess can also be crowned. Until a crown prince is named, Dorothea could also claim the throne. There are 2 heirs, so no one knows who will occupy the throne. Everyone is divided between them. Initially, the prince had a brother, but he died due to an accident, after which the empress died. And now only Ayla was interested in how the empress and the second prince died, because this is not mentioned at all in the book. Ayla thought that if she wanted to live in peace, she had to go to a tea party. Staying away from strong people was a bad idea. Then she asked if Edith would go there, and Henry replied that she was probably invited too, because she attracted a lot of attention, like the prince's love. This made Ayla happy, because if she met her, she could explain to her that there was a misunderstanding at the ball. After writing a reply to the invitation, Ayla went with Claude, and he asked her what brought her here. Ayla apologized for what happened at the ball. Although they started first, she shouldn't have put on such a show in front of everyone. She thought it would be better to just apologize to him. And then Claude surprised her again by telling her that she had done the right thing. Claude said she could continue to do whatever she wanted, and that the next time someone touched her, she should pour alcohol on them the same way the prince did. He asked if that was all she wanted to say, or if there was something else, and added that she had done nothing wrong, so there was no need to apologize. Ayla told him that the princess had invited her to a tea party. Claude replied that they could go together, which was quite strange, because only noble ladies were invited. She imagined what it would be like if Claude went to drink tea with her. Then she told Claude that she would go there herself, because only girls were invited. And sad Claude said that if someone was rude to her, she should serve them tea. The hotter the tea, the better, Claude said kindly, and then asked to remember their names. If someone is rude, he will destroy their family. Ayla decided it would be better to ignore those who were pushing, otherwise she would have even more work. The day of the tea party arrived. Ayla got dressed and, embarrassed, asked Lena if she was too dressed up. Lena replied that she looked great in bright clothes, and added that it had been a long time since she went to tea parties, so it was important to attract attention with flashy clothes. Ayla got into the carriage, and after a while arrived at the castle. The other girls saw her and immediately left. Ayla thought they were used to making fun of her, but now they were avoiding her, because they knew she would defend herself. Sitting at the table, she again noticed the unpleasant look with which Edith was looking at her. Ayla noticed that the dress code was quite strange, because the color of their dresses contrasted too much with each other. When everyone sat at the table, the princess said she was glad to see Duchess Reinhardt here, and Ayla thanked her for the invitation. Then, one of the girls said it was the first time she saw her after the ball. She said that at that time she was so inflexible, and mockingly asked if His Highness knew about it. The princess asked if they had fun at her brother's birthday, and said she was embarrassed not to be able to attend due to illness. Another girl specifically mentioned the moment when a boy disrespected the Duchess, and she personally punished him, apparently pouring alcohol on him. The girl continued to look at her, saying that it was too much for a noble lady and that she didn't believe even commoners would do such a thing. Ayla asked what family she was from. Apparently, she remembered Claude's advice, and the girl replied that she was from the Zafir family, and shamelessly said that apparently she didn't have proper education. This made Ayla laugh, and then the girl asked her what she was laughing at, and repeated that she didn't have a proper education. Ayla said that apparently the lady wants to glorify her family by insulting the ducal family. Insulting the royal family carries the highest penalty. This is a sin that cannot be forgiven in the empire. Then the girl shouted that she was too rude. Ayla said that she was not the only one who poured alcohol at the banquet, which means that from Lady Zafir's words, it follows that the first prince did something so vulgar that commoners wouldn't do. She said she would endure it if they insulted her, but she never thought Lady Zafir would dare to insult the first prince, the young son of the empire. Ayla rearranged everything so that the girl was not insulting her, but the prince. Ayla said that His Highness was also here, so she advised them not to be so stubborn. Ayla decided to show them that she should no longer be joked about as before. The princess said that Lady Zafir was probably beside herself with emotion, and the lady apologized pitifully for her behavior. And then the princess advised her to speak better, and asked her to leave the tea party to think about what she had said. Then the princess asked if the Duchess was offended, and Ayla replied that of course not. It was nothing more than an outburst from one person. Ayla asked if the princess was disappointed, and she replied that the Duchess was very sensitive, and suggested they forget about it and have tea. The mood has changed a lot. Apparently others are now afraid that they will also be expelled from the tea party. But Edith interrupted the silence by asking Ayla what kind of relationship they have with the Duke. Ayla began to feel nervous, perhaps due to the unwanted attention of the crown prince at the ball. And then she asked if something was wrong with Lady Edith, and the girl replied that she could call her Edith. Ayla thought she was probably laughing at her, or maybe just mocking her. If not, it was a relief. After all, Ayla would like not to spoil her relationship with the main character. Edith continued that she always wanted to know her better, so she asked and repeated the same question. Apparently, she was just jealous of the prince for Ayla. Ayla thought everyone knew she had a bad relationship with her husband, but still, she kept asking such an obvious thing in front of everyone. She asked in response if there was a reason why Lady Edith was asking this. Ayla said that it was not very good to show so much interest in other people's relationships. And Edith replied that couples should get along well, so one should not covet other men. Her jealousy is too obvious. Then Edith put on the mask of a kind girl again and said that, of course, she didn't mean the Duchess, who had just seen girls like that before. This girl is not like everyone else. Ayla thought the heroine was not like this in the book. She doesn't resemble her at all. Any story can be described in different ways. A villain can be a hero in their story, and vice versa. Ayla remembered that in the book she was a passive character who didn't talk to strangers, but that she was beautiful in heart. And the first prince and Edith met for the first time when he helped her in difficult times. Ayla suspected that the book did not show all the personalities of the characters, but the differences were too obvious. Maybe there is a different scenario here, not like in the book. It is logical to assume that there is some kind of secret here, if it is a story that is not told in the book. But then, Edith pretended to apologize if they misunderstood her, and said that she was really interested in their relationship. Ayla replied that she shouldn't worry about it. And then, a girl said that she was known for her relationship with the Duke, so it makes sense that she avoided the topic. So Ayla wanted to answer her. But suddenly, Claude appeared behind Ayla and asked her who dared to say they had a bad relationship. While that girl apologized, Ayla stood up, thinking that she hated crowds of people. But she came anyway. Claude pulled Ayla towards him and told the girl to tell him to his face, asking what kind of relationship they had. Then he asked Ayla if she was having fun at the tea party, but he answered himself that of course she wasn't having fun, because some people open their mouths without understanding anything. Claude told everyone to stop talking nonsense and that they had the best possible relationship, and he added that those words angered him. The princess finally spoke, saying that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Claude apologized for his late appearance. Then he asked Claude what brought the Duke to her tea party, and Claude replied that he was his wife's escort. Everyone was surprised that the Iron Duke came here because of her, and that they had heard that their relationship was bad. The princess invited him to sit, but Claude said they were leaving. Moving further away from the tea party, Ayla took her hand off Claude's shoulder. She asked him why he had come. Claude replied that he came to pick her up, and asked if anyone had been rude to her. Ayla replied that the lady told the truth. Claude said that if the other ladies behaved the same way, he would take care of them. She just needed to tell the details. Ayla replied that everything was already settled, and besides, they didn't have affection in the relationship. Besides, with everything going so well between them, these words annoyed Claude. That he didn't expect such an answer. Ayla asked him to stop behaving like this. She appreciates the help, but she is used to such ridicule, and then they heard someone's voice. The prince appeared in front of them. Ayla was already tired of such strange encounters, until the prince said that they had met again. Apparently, it was destiny. Ayla thought this was not destiny at all, and those words scared her. But out loud she just greeted him. The prince asked her if she was eager to meet him, and then Claude stood between them, and said that this was his wife, and added that he should stop calling her by her name. Then, the prince said that he did not expect such speeches from the Iron Duke, and asked him if he refused, and continued to communicate with her. Claude replied that she was the mistress of the Reinhardt Duchy. She was not the person he could play with as he pleased. Ayla, looking at them, thought that Claude was actually a potential traitor, because he behaves this way even with the Empire's prince. The prince said he was just having fun, that he didn't mean it seriously, but that he did not expect the Iron Duke to represent his wife as a mountain. He apologized to Ayla for being rude and asked if he could be allowed to call him by his name. And when Ayla immediately refused him, he said that then he could allow it the next time they met. After an unpleasant conversation, our couple got into the carriage, and Claude grimly said that he did not know that she was so close to the first prince. Ayla replied no, but Claude said he was happy to see her again. Ayla replied that she didn't care. Claude looked at her in disbelief, without responding anything. Ayla wondered if he really cared that much. Then Ayla asked what bothered him, and Claude replied that he had already said before that he was very jealous. Upon returning home, Ayla jumped onto the bed, thinking that they had spent the rest of the journey in an awkward silence. That made it hard to breathe, and now it was as if she had come back to life. Thinking that the familiar could become so terrible, her eyes seemed sincere. Then Lena, who as always was in a great mood, burst in and asked her if she should bring lunch to her room. Ayla sat on her bed and replied affirmatively. Then Lena said she would immediately order food to be brought. But then Henry knocked on the door, and Ayla allowed him into the room. Henry said that his lordship was inviting her to a joint dinner. Ayla was surprised that he called her so suddenly, and thought that if she refused, he would stare at her again, and she told Henry that she agreed. Lena happily said that everything would be fine, and advised her to enjoy her lunch. Ayla went down. It was her first time here, and if she had known it was so beautiful here, she would have come down sooner. Claude was already there, and when she approached, he pulled a chair closer to her and said it was an honor that she accepted his invitation. He dismissed all the maids, saying he did it because he wanted to tell her something personally. Ayla said she was surprised that he suddenly called her to dinner, and Claude asked her why they didn't eat together more often from now on. Claude asked her if she wanted to say those words again, if she would ask him why he behaved this way, even if she didn't like it. He said he didn't do this before because she was afraid of him back then, but that now she is no longer afraid. Claude added that he would also like to apologize for what happened at the tea party. Ayla was surprised that Claude was wasting his precious time just to apologize. She believed in herself that there was no need to hesitate. She just needed to divorce him. She just needed to continue without showing him much attention. And trying to understand Claude only distracts her. Ayla thought she needed to do this and told him why he was even apologizing. Claude replied that he was just in the palace. His words were true about the distance between them. He knows that his actions may have led to this. Claude explained that he did not expect people to dare to look down on her, despite the Reinhardt name. And now he understands why she wanted to run away from him so much. He said he would like to re-establish their relationship because he wants to get closer to her. Not because of a promise, he just wants to get to know her better. Because she is no longer afraid of him, she is not asking him for something like love. Ayla thought Claude kept talking, even though his hands were trembling slightly. For the first time, she saw him trying to convey his most sincere feelings, like a real person, not like a character in a book. Claude sincerely said that he wanted to get closer to her. Because of this, Ayla could not stay here any longer and stood up, apologized, and said she would be the first to return to the room. She continued running further and further, but it seemed she was not running away from Claude, but from the feelings that might arise if she continued to listen to him. A few days had passed since she had lunch with Claude. Maybe he was busy with work, but she hadn't seen him since that day, and she was simply sitting in her room. Suddenly, there was a knock on her door, and Ayla allowed him in. She probably thought it was Lena and didn't expect to see Claude at her door. She was surprised that Claude came to her so early without notice. She stood up and asked him that she didn't expect such a visit. And then she noticed that he was holding a tray with breakfast. He said he heard that she was having breakfast in the room, so he brought it to her. Ayla said she ordered this from the servant, not to her. Claude replied that she should be flattered, because he hadn't followed anyone's orders yet. Claude said confidently. She thought she was embarrassed because she left without answering, but this visit makes the situation even worse. Claude put the breakfast on the table and suggested she eat it before it got cold, but Ayla still felt uncomfortable. She realized that her favorite food was on the tray, but it seemed like a lot for breakfast. Ayla started eating and asked him if he was going to eat. Ayla said she thought he hadn't had breakfast yet, and Claude replied that he usually did it without her, and he asked her not to worry and to eat. She remembered that he doesn't eat because it breaks his concentration, and yet he offered her something to eat. Claude said he came here to feed her, but Ayla didn't listen to him. She brought Claude a piece of meat and asked him to tell Am. Claude thought it was stupid, but opened his mouth and ate it anyway, and said it wasn't so bad. Ayla thought she looked like she was feeding a wild animal and offered him another piece of meat again, which he ate. Then he said that now she could eat alone and asked why he brought breakfast. And Claude reminded her that he wanted to get closer to her. Claude asked if she had time today. Ayla, a little embarrassed, replied why he was asking. He said he heard that the spring festival was opening and asked if she wanted to go with him. Ayla couldn't even think that Claude would invite her on a date in such a crowded place. But still, she agreed. And then Claude said he would start getting ready and would come to pick her up a little later. Lena happily asked if it was true that the Duke had invited her to the festival. And Ayla replied yes. It seems Lena was happier than Ayla. And then Ayla asked her why she was so happy. And Lena replied that the festival is famous for the fact that many couples come. Ayla didn't know anything about this, and Lena said that it would be full of precious flowers, that the place was perfect for a date. And besides, she heard that if you give flowers to your loved one, you will be together. But the Duke invited her to the festival, which means he loves her and will probably give her flowers. Ayla told Lena, a little irritated, that her imagination was too far-fetched. Lena apologized and asked if it was the first time they went to the festival together. She said she knew the Duke didn't like crowded places and that he had never been there before, and added that the Duke had been in the room for several days, perhaps preparing for this outing, trying to get all the work done in advance. Ayla thought he was avoiding her because he was leaving like this, but Claude was always busy with the book. Then he really freed up time for their date, and Lena finally finished combing her hair. Ayla thanked her for her work. When Ayla went out into the hallway, Claude was already waiting for her, and again their outfits were similar. She asked him how long he had been waiting. Claude replied not long. Taking her hand, they went to the festival. The place was really beautiful. Ayla noticed the decorations and took Claude by the hand and dragged him there, saying she wanted to see the decorations up close. Ayla noticed that Claude was silent and turned to see Claude blushing. Claude said his heart ached that she was using him like that, and said that she could have told him right away if she wanted to join hands. At first, Ayla started to object that she didn't want this at all, but then Claude offered to take a walk. And he offered her his hand, and this time she took it. They approached the counter and Ayla, who liked jewelry, was happy. And Claude calmly said that if she liked it, he would buy anything. Ayla replied that she just wanted to look, and asked him not to be so extravagant, because others should also buy. No need to buy everything. They walked for a while, and Ayla said she thought he didn't like festivals, and that he had never been to them. Claude replied that he didn't like them before, but now he loved them. Ayla asked why he suddenly changed his mind, and Claude replied because she liked them. That's why he fell in love with them. Claude said he wanted to show her a place, and they went higher, where there was an excellent view. It started getting colder, and Claude took off his jacket and put it on Ayla. Then he walked away and just said he would be back soon. Ayla was left alone with this beautiful view. Suddenly fireworks erupted, and the night lit up. And then Ayla thought she would like Claude to be by her side now and see this beauty. Then Claude appeared with a bouquet of flowers, saying that he left to buy her flowers. Claude said that he personally wanted to give it to her, and Ayla asked him if he knew what giving flowers at the spring festival meant. And then Claude approached her and asked her to forget about her thoughts and feelings because she was much more important and could ignore him. In the end, Ayla accepted Claude's gift. It seems the ice between them slowly melted. Upon returning home, Ayla continued to look thoughtfully at the flowers, hoping they would simply dry up, and all the petals would fall, so that the unknown emotions would also dry up and disintegrate. She thought that the easiest plan was divorce, but now doubts crept in. For some reason, the atmosphere around Claude changed after the festival, also with the attention of the servants, even with the ever-bright Lena. Lena made it clear that she was crying, and Ayla asked if everything was okay, and of course, Lena lied by saying everything was fine. Ayla said she could trust her, and Lena replied that the beast appeared in effort. They appear often at this time, but never there. Indeed, near the Duke's territories and many people live there, and it turned out that Lena's family also suffered. Ayla stood up, hugged Lena, and told her that everything would be fine and that she was sure of it. She asked if the damage was severe. Lena replied that they tried to stop it as best they could, but the people there are weak, and only his lordship couldn't win. Monsters bred with evil mana are strong and resilient, making them difficult to kill if the hunter is weak. They are a seductive problem, mainly their recovery. Their recovery speed is crazy. They regenerate even if they are almost dead. They only die from a strong blow. Undoubtedly, only Claude can do this. The situation and effort must be very serious. It is difficult to fight regenerating beasts. The crown prince seemed to kill them easily in the book. She started to remember that he was connected to heroine. Suddenly, she remembered something and told Lena not to worry, that she would take care of everything. Henry told Claude that mana there belongs to Drake. Several individuals appeared in the northern forest of Ephraton a week ago and settled there. Drake is the name of the monster. Claude said Ephraton shouldn't have been on the way. It was strange that they ended up there. Henry said that fortunately, doctors and rescuers worked together quickly so that the damage was not so severe. But as long as their strength lasted, Claude wondered why the mid-level Drake behaved this way. And then Claude ordered all knights to be ready, and he was going to go to the city immediately. Ayla approached Claude, and he told her that before leaving, he wanted to tell her something. He thought he would be away for a while, but this does not mean that he is going to break his promise, and he will return soon. Ayla thought that she would ask for more time because he was leaving, because she would not know exactly when he would return. And then Ayla said that she also wanted to tell him that she also wanted to go to the city with him. Claude was very surprised and immediately said that if she was thinking of traveling with him, then she should stop doing that. He said that even if he didn't reach the end of the promise, the trip was already decided. But Ayla thought that the information she had was worth it for this situation, so she had to leave. All problems will be solved if she finds a magic sword that kills monsters in one blow. Noah of Ephraton is a legendary blacksmith, a name that sounded familiar to her because that is where the crown prince met. And Noah, after their encounter, Noah became a legendary blacksmith. He is more of an inventor than a blacksmith and tries to create something new, not a custom item. The items may be stronger than existing ones, but most are, which is why he received the corresponding nickname. But he had actually created a new weapon, a sword capable of killing monsters with a single blow. And the first to notice its value was the prince who fled in search of evidence of Claude's rebellion. It's better to get it yourself than to give it to him, and even better to find Lena's family. Ayla said she definitely wouldn't bother him and would only avoid getting hurt in safe areas. Claude said that if she wanted something, she could tell him and get it immediately. He said he could solve everything with a single word and asked why she needed to go to Etherton. And Ayla again promised that she would not interfere with him. Claude said irritably that it was dangerous there. They said they were blocking the animals as best they could, but one could never be sure, because the barrier could be broken, and the whole city could be digested into ruins. Ayla said she would be in the city, and not on the battlefield, and if the Duchess appeared there in person, morale would increase. But Claude replied again that he refused and asked her to stay on the estate. And at night, while Claude was reading a book in his room, Ayla saw him again. Ayla said that they did not finish the conversation, that he simply left, and that she never saw him again. She sat on the floor and said that she really needed to get to Ephraton at any cost, and that she would not take a step back until he answered. For the sake of Claude, Lena, and everyone else, she must get there. Besides, he doesn't like being disturbed before bed, because then he will be tired. Claude said that the decision would not change even if she cried. What kind of husband would allow his wife to go to such a dangerous place? And he asked her to go to bed. Ayla said that if he didn't like it, she would tell him they could go together, but Claude replied that wouldn't happen. And he went to bed. An hour later, Ayla was still sitting on the cold floor and was already angry because Claude was so stubborn. She asked him if he was really sleeping and how someone could sleep in such a situation. Ayla herself started to fall asleep, but decided she couldn't retreat. Claude wondered why she suddenly went silent and decided to take a look. And he turned around to see that Ayla was already asleep. He got out of bed, approached her, and told her that this woman was really special. Then he lifted her and laid her on the bed, looking at her and telling her how she could win. Morning came and Ayla woke up in bed, and she was very surprised by this. And she got up and saw Claude. It seems they switched places. Claude spent the whole night on the cold floor and asked her if she slept well. Claude asked her to come to his room. He needed to wash his face. Ayla apologized and said they could talk later. But then Claude surprised her by telling her that if she promised not to leave the guard, he would allow her to go with him. Ayla was very happy about this and began to thank him and promise him that she would be safe. And after a while, they arrived in the city. 2 knights appeared in front of Ayla, Janice and Rosen. They will accompany her during her stay in the city. Ayla also introduced herself and said she looked forward to working together. Rosen said very energetically that they would help her. Claude said they are obliged to protect Ayla at all costs. Now this is their main task. Then he approached Ayla and asked her not to do anything dangerous. He said he couldn't imagine what he would do if she got hurt. Ayla promised him this. She herself thought that she didn't want to get hurt because she hates pain. She was glad they could get there without incident, although the journey was quite unusual. Claude said that her skills are good, so there is no need to worry. Ayla looked at the guards and wondered if it was right to assign such high-level knights just to protect her. All residents were very happy when they saw Claude and said that they were now safe. They seemed to like Claude. Ayla also thought she didn't expect people to like Claude so much, and when she came out, people also started greeting her happily. Claude turned to Ayla and told her that he would go see the problem and asked her not to do anything dangerous, and that he would return soon. Rosen asked where the lady wanted to go and said that the Duke suggested they find separate accommodation for her and that they could do it right now. But Ayla replied that she wanted to go to the blacksmith. Noah is a famous blacksmith. If she goes for a walk, she will definitely find someone who knows about him. Ayla asked if they knew where there were blacksmiths nearby. Rosen said that he comes here often and that he could take her to them. Rosen was very sociable. He said that the local blacksmiths were excellent, and he himself ordered his sword from them. When they arrived, the blacksmith and his subordinate were very surprised and asked what the Duchess was doing here. Ayla thanked them for their hard work. The blacksmith said that the only thing they could do was forge weapons for the battle, and that they would try to provide weapons to the knights. The blacksmith said that she was holding him back too much and asked what the lady was looking for, and Ayla replied that she was looking for a blacksmith named Noah. For some reason, this surprised the blacksmith, who said that Noah was a fool, and suggested that, with all due respect, she look for another blacksmith. and if she doesn't like his variety, he can show her another blacksmith closer by. Ayla thought it seemed like Noah was being treated badly until now, but decided to find him anyway. Janice stepped forward and ordered that anyone who knew Noah's whereabouts be informed, and they told her the street where Noah works. Upon hearing the address, Ayla happily thanked the workers and told the knights to go there, to the legendary blacksmith. When they arrived at that street, they noticed that the forge was in poor condition, and Rosen asked her if she was sure this was where she wanted to go. Ayla confidently entered the forge and saw Noah, who was surprised that someone had come to him. Janice ordered respect to be shown to Duchess Reinhardt. Ayla approached Noah and told him that she had an order. Ayla asked him to make her a magic sword, but for some reason Noah was very shy and said he couldn't do it. Ayla asked him why he didn't want to do it, and Noah replied that he didn't know how to make it. He thought he couldn't make a magic sword. It had been a long time since he made such a sword, and he was afraid he had lost his skills. Noah said he has no idea how to do magical things. And not only him, but other blacksmiths don't know either. However, Ayla said that everything was fine because she herself knew how to make that sword. And Noah asked if she herself knew everything perfectly, why did she come to him? Because he is not the only blacksmith in the city. Ayla asked him if he didn't want to forge a weapon that others couldn't forge, so rare that his name would go down in history. And she promised to help him with this, and added that his sensitivity to magic is the best. Approaching Noah, Ayla whispered to him that if he combines the mana crystal with an ordinary sword, he can make a magic sword. The recipe for creating a legendary sword is simple. You just need to combine the mana crystal and the sword. You have to be very careful with the crystals. Even mages often break them when they try to use them. That's why they have such a high price. No one can handle such an object without destroying it, and only Noah is capable of doing it. He is very sensitive to magic, the only one who can connect the sword with the mana crystal. The book said that if Noah had access to the mana crystal, he would become the strongest mage. Unfortunately, he simply cannot retain mana in his body and cannot use it himself. But he has the ability to place a crystal in a sword. Thanks to working with his grandfather when he was a child, he learned blacksmithing. Noah knows the formula to solve a problem and how to apply it. By constantly proving himself, he finally managed to create the magic sword in the book. And after a while, it was taken by the prince. The first prince, suspecting Claude was a traitor, hanged Noah in Etherton, claiming that he could create magic swords while looking for evidence. The crown prince was the only one who believed in his own wrapped magic sword and showed incredible results, although the power depends on the abilities of the user. If he can use mana through the integrated crystal to create an aura, that's why she needs this sword. Compared to other weapons, injuries cannot be restored with it. The crown prince, who attracted the creator of magic swords to his side, will seriously strengthen his position. The presence of this sword in the first prince greatly influenced Claude's death. Although he also has a good weapon, it cannot compare to a magical creation. And now the story can be changed. The first one who showed attention to Noah was Ayla, not the prince. Maybe this story will become one in which the main character loses. She feels a little sorry for the prince, but he uses the sword to destroy the Reinhardts. And as a member of this family, she cannot allow this. Now Noah is hers. She extended her hand and asked if they had agreed. Noah agreed and asked if she would punish him if he failed. Ayla said that she would be the one to blame for giving an impossible order. Ayla asked him to try, and she would give him everything he needed, but of course, he would definitely succeed. Noah quickly ran in and out and brought the drawings with him and immediately started drawing. Then he said that he needed an expensive crystal, and Ayla said that she promised to help him and that she could bring all the mana crystals she could find in the city. In any case, Ayla asked if it would be possible to combine the mana crystal with an already completed item. Noah, after thinking, said he wasn't sure, but he had an unfinished sword and, with her permission, he would turn it into a magic one. He added that he felt like he wasn't doing well, so he hadn't touched swords in a long time. And after meeting her, this feeling disappeared. Ayla said she would send him crystals if he needed anything else to ask her, and that he could hire people to work with her money if necessary. She said she would pay for everything, and that if he could complete the sword, she would give him double what he got today. Then, Ayla asked him if he knew about the current situation, so she wanted him to make the sword as quickly as possible. And Noah promised to give his all. Then, Ayla and the knights went out, and Rosen asked her what she planned to do. Ayla replied that to succeed, she would need better weapons. Otherwise, nothing would change. Janice told Rosen to stop talking nonsense and reminded him that his job was to protect the mistress, not contradict her. Ayla laughed and said they should go buy mana crystals at the largest store and send them to Noah. After a hard day, Ayla went to her room and sat on the bed, thinking that somehow she felt lonely without Claude. Probably, he was already defending the border. She kept thinking about Claude, that he was probably busy and hoped he wouldn't get hurt. And she admitted that she was worried. Suddenly, she realized what she had just said and stopped, but a second later, she started worrying about Claude again. Ayla hoped he wouldn't come back injured, but again she stopped, wondering what was happening to him. She seems to be starting to fall in love with him. 3 days later, she went to Noah, who was happy to see her. Noah happily started shouting, "How did you know how to create a magic sword? This is the achievement of the century. No one even thought of it." Ayla said it was a secret. In any case, it seems the work is in full swing, since Noah has already called Ayla. She asked him to bring her, which he already did, and Noah showed her the sword and told her that if she asked him how far along it was. Noah laughed and then calmed down and said that this magic sword was completely ready. Ayla picked up the sword, and Noah said the sword was ready, a masterpiece that could not be recreated. Seeing the sword, Ayla said it was magnificent. Noah replied that he himself couldn't believe he could make such a sword. And Ayla said that Noah was incredible. Noah was surprised and asked her if she was talking about him. Ayla replied that it was about him. She called him the greatest blacksmith who created the legendary magic sword. Ayla said she would help him. She would give him all the money he needed. And now the decision was up to Noah. Ayla asked him if he was ready to work for the Reinhardt family. Changing his destiny will change history. That's why this opportunity could not be missed. Whoever arrived first got his slippers. Noah, of course, agreed to work for his family. And at that moment, Claude continued to fight on the border, protecting all the inhabitants of the city. The man was impressed that Claude cut the monster with ease, without even getting a scratch. Then he told Claude that he was great and that he couldn't help but admire him, and Claude calmly said that there were too many monsters. Claude continued saying that the number of monsters is huge, but no one can understand where they come from. He thought this made no sense. Then he said he only saw 2 reasons. Either the Knights of Etherton are so mediocre that they don't see where so many Pollacks come from, or they move so secretly that not even they and the forest scouts can detect them. And Claude ordered everyone to descend. He thought there was no point in prolonging the battle. And then Rosen approached him. Claude immediately asked him what he was doing here, and said that he definitely ordered him to protect Ayla. And Rosen said that the lady urgently asked to meet him. Rosen said that nothing could happen to her, because he and Janice protect the mistress like an iron wall. Claude replied that it would be better if it were true, because if a single hair fell from her head, he would beg him to commit suicide. Then Claude asked where Ayla was now. Rosen replied that she was waiting for him in the room, and asked if the Duke himself was injured. Claude shrugged with a few words, saying only that he had received a couple of scratches. And then he met Ayla in the room. Ayla thanked him for coming immediately and apologized for calling him so suddenly. She noticed that Claude looked exhausted, although he tried to hide it. She said she had something for him. Claude was surprised, and Ayla handed him a magic sword. Claude took the magic sword in his hands and thought he wondered what he would give her. But he didn't expect this. Then he told Ayla that he didn't expect her first gift to be a sword, and then thanked her. His smile amazed Ayla on the spot. Claude continued holding the sword and said that the sword was wonderful. Looking closer at the sword, he saw a crystal inside the sword and asked if it was a mana crystal. He wondered how he could have placed it there, and Ayla said it was a magic sword. Claude had only heard legends about those types of swords. Ayla advised him to put all his energy into it. Claude did so, and the sword shone blue. It turns out that the size and duration of the aura's glow depend on the strength of the user. She was convinced again that Claude was strong. Then, Ayla said that now he can easily hit the monsters with his help. Besides, they won't be able to regenerate the wounds caused by the aura. Claude asked how she knew all this. She lied and said she read it in an old book when she lived with the Count. Whereas Ayla said she came here to give it to Claude, and that if he uses this sword, he will be able to deal with monsters more easily. Ayla hadn't finished speaking when she noticed the blood on his shirt getting closer. She asked if it was his blood. Claude was about to say that he was completely fine when he fell to the ground, losing consciousness. Ayla shouted at him to wake up, and after a while Claude opened his eyes. She helped him sit on the bed, and Claude said that there was nothing serious. He just rushed towards her, so they bandaged him badly, but everything was fine. Claude asked her if she was really scared for him. Ayla thought it was obvious, and Claude asked her if she was angry with him. Ayla thought he was so worried about her that he neglected his wounds, and of course, she was furious. Then she apologized and got to work. She helped him bandage his wounds, and Claude, embarrassed, said that now everything was fine, and that she could stop. But Ayla replied that he had cuts all over his body, and that, if she didn't treat them carefully, they would rot, and she asked him if he was trying to turn her into a widow who lost her husband in the war. Claude stopped her hand and asked her not to look at him. Ayla thought he was shy, but Claude noticed how his hands were trembling and asked her to calm down. He said that she got scared just by seeing them and suggested that she call a doctor who would treat him calmly. Ayla, barely restraining tears, said she was scared because he was injured, and not because of the wounds themselves. She said she was worried about him. She asked him to tell her that he would take care of the monsters, so why not take care of his body? Claude replied that those scratches would not affect his abilities in any way, and that he was already used to it, so it wasn't a problem. She wondered if he really thought this was normal because he was used to it. After all, he was bleeding because the skin was torn. Claude took her hand and said that only Ayla worries about those scratches. Just a couple of days ago, Ayla was telling herself that he was just a book character, only thinking about getting out of here and avoiding deaths. She believed she was the only one alive in this world. But Claude, who for her was just a character in a book, was bleeding out before her eyes. She can see him and even touch him. She can understand when he feels pain. She realized that she was too arrogant. Ayla told Claude to listen carefully and told him that a wound is a wound and that he shouldn't hide them. She asked him to show her all his wounds. No one in this world will feel good after something like this. If you keep saying this, people will really believe that he is fine. Then he will even convince himself of it, and when things get really bad, he will force himself to think that everything is fine. She said she was afraid that he would become like this, and asked him to promise her that being tired and feeling pain was normal. So she asked him about it. Claude agreed and promised to take better care of himself. Then Ayla dipped a rag and wiped his wounds. While Claude felt uncomfortable, someone was worried about him, and it was unusual for him, and he didn't know how to react. He always believed that the world was divided into two, those who needed to be cared for, and those who needed to be crushed. Claude was forced to live up to the expectations of the people who came to him for protection. And the fact that there was someone who cared about him was strange to him. So he asked her to stop, got up, got dressed, thanked her for the gift, and told her that he would definitely use it. And he added that it was time to leave, that he would quickly take care of the monsters, thanks to Ayla. And he asked her to wait for him a little. Ayla agreed and ordered him to return to her without any more wounds, and reminded him of the promise he had made a little earlier. From that moment on, Claude was constantly busy with monsters trying to break the defense. Handing over the sword, she couldn't even see him now. At this rate, it would take him a month to get rid of everyone. And if the promised month continues like this, Ayla said she was thinking of simply divorcing. The only thing she needs is to bring the divorce papers with Claude's seal, and it will be over. But for some reason, her heart was heavy. Ayla shouted that this was a nightmare, because it turned out as she wanted, but it still didn't make her feel better. Then she thought that she probably felt this way because the situation here had not yet been resolved. Maybe she was worried about what Claude's family and Lena were facing. So she got dressed and went to the blacksmiths and asked them how the work was going. The blacksmith asked her if she was sure that Noah had made that same sword. With Noah's help, it would take a long time to establish mass production of magic swords. If he worked alone, it would take a long time, so she couldn't help but think of other masters. They make the base, and in the end, Noah pours a mana crystal into it. Ayla couldn't believe that so many swords had already been made. It seems buying an entire forge paid off. She called Noah and asked if those swords were ready. Noah gave a positive answer, and Ayla told Janice to take one. It's time to test the power of Noah's magic sword once more, but this time in front of everyone. Ayla advised her to pour her energy into the sword, entrusting her power to the weapon, and the sword glowed purple. Janice said she wanted to test something, asked for permission, and in one blow cut the shield in two. Janice and Ayla were satisfied with the result, but the blacksmith couldn't say the same. Ayla thought that if the other soldiers did the same, there would be no monsters left in a moment. She said she knew everyone was working hard, but unfortunately she couldn't offer rest yet. The man said that their results were incredible. He couldn't believe that now even ordinary knights could kill monsters. Claude asked what their losses had been, and the knight replied, only a couple of injured. And no dead ones. All thanks to the swords Lady Ayla gave them. It would have been impossible to kill them without the aura. Claude intended to live up to their hopes and destroy all the monsters that decided to settle here. One by one, and after 3 days of fighting, they finally destroyed all the monsters. But Claude immediately headed somewhere. He thought Ayla would definitely be surprised if she saw him in this state, so Claude first decided to tidy himself up. Claude thought that tomorrow was the last day of the promise. He changed his clothes and ordered the carriage to be prepared. And Ayla, in her room, thought that 1 month was not enough from the beginning, and that now she could finally divorce Claude. A calm and safe life, where her life would not be in danger. To be freed from the fate that awaits her and Claude, she would most likely die. Just like in the book, she would die at the hands of the crown prince, without knowing that the future is already decided, and that there is already a main character in this world. With his eyes on the throne, he would probably die when his plans failed, without the slightest chance of success. His role is simple: to elevate the first prince after killing the traitor. This is how he will become the crown prince, in this world where everything is already written. The death of a character is just a step on the hero's path. He must die for the main plot to advance. Ayla was angry at this injustice. The Claude she notices sacrificed himself to protect the people. He is the one who doesn't care about his wounds until the people are safe. Ayla remembered all their moments together, in which Claude always cared for her. And his feelings. Ayla, a living person and not a character, whose only role was to be a stepping stone on the hero's path. She thought she shouldn't die like this. She started to wonder if she could help him in some way, but immediately thought that she had been waiting for this day to survive, and she couldn't risk her life. While Ayla was struggling with her own thoughts, there was a knock on her door and they said the Duke had arrived. Then Claude came to see her. She wondered how she could even look him in the face. Ayla noticed that he was not injured and then greeted him. Claude approached her, touched her hair, and told her that he missed her very much. He said the battle was over. They destroyed all the monsters, and the remaining young animals were exterminated. The city is safe, and all thanks to Ayla. Ayla thought that he didn't know that her promise ended tomorrow, so she decided to remind him of her monthly promise. Claude replied that he thought about it every day, which is why he remembers everything, because for him it is more important than anything else. And he added that he still had 2 days left. Ayla was surprised that Claude hadn't given up yet. Claude said he didn't know how to immediately change his feelings, even though he tried. But then he realized that there is only one way to express his true emotions, no matter how long it takes him. Until the end, he will keep trying. Ayla asked him what he was planning now, and said that they didn't have much time left. So she had to think carefully, and Claude suggested going to the barrier. There, all the knights fought with monsters. Claude took her hand and asked if she was ready. Ayla took his hand and replied that she was ready. In the carriage, Claude said that the knights were still at the barrier, so she had nothing to worry about. Ayla replied that she did, so she was not afraid of anything. Upon hearing her words, Claude became very embarrassed and turned around, thanking her for her trust. He said he wanted to show her the peaceful landscape behind the barrier that they had returned thanks to her. If it weren't for her, the battles would have continued and many lives would have been saved. The knights at the barrier wanted to thank her. Ayla was surprised that he missed her, even though they would be divorced soon. And she told him that it was an honor for her to help the knights. And thinking of Claude, she felt bad for a second. Claude asked her if any part hurt. Then he said they would get out of the carriage soon and asked her to hold on. He thought the sun was already setting, and there was no need to think much about it. He told himself that he had to give her everything, her happiness, her freedom. He couldn't ignore them. He decided to try not to regret anything, even if she left. They arrived at the barrier and reached the edge. Claude said that it was quiet here now, and that he wanted to show her this place. Claude said that recently, there have been monsters roaming around here. But thanks to Ayla, he was able to deal with them quickly. Then he told her that if she stayed with him, he would give her everything, and he will always be sincere with her. Then he took something out of his pocket, saying he had something for her. He took out the box, and upon opening it, Ayla saw a beautiful ring. She thought she couldn't accept this gift. Claude said he would love her no matter what she chose. That's why he wanted to give her a ring that day. But even if she left, he spoiled her to accept the gift so that when she looked at it in the future, she would remember him. Claude asked her if he was too selfish, but he answered himself that he couldn't do anything else because he wanted to have her in his heart. It's quite strange, but he wants to do a lot for her, even though he doesn't fully understand it himself, and asked her if she would accept it. Ayla thought he was asking her with that look, and of course she couldn't refuse. And she offered him her hand, and Claude put the ring on. She thought that even though he was asking her to remember him at least once, even though she herself understood that she would constantly think of him. And then, hearing a whisper, she turned around and all the knights surrounded her, and they thanked her for her help. When they got a little closer, Claude immediately told them not to get so close. The knights apologized. They thanked Ayla again and left. Ayla told Claude that he shouldn't have chased them away. Claude replied that he thought she wanted him to look at her. And apparently embarrassed, he told her to look at the sky. The sun had already set and bright stars shone in the sky. Ayla was happy about so many stars and told Claude that she would always remember this moment. Claude replied that he would not forget her either. The next day, finally Claude's last day of the promise, Ayla approached him, and Claude told her that he knew what she wanted to say. The contract began at the estate, and today he would like to end it here and asked her if she would allow him to do so. Then he asked her to wait a little. He was going to check the drake's nest. It wouldn't take long. They were informed, they found something there, and he needed to check everything. Ayla thought that if he came back to her, it would be harder for her and everything could be prolonged. And then Ayla asked him if she could go with him and promised him that everything would be fine. Claude thought this was the last chance to spend more time with her. So he agreed, because when they returned to the estate, they would have to hang him. And these would be his last moments with Ayla. In karate, Claude made sure Ayla was okay, and only then did they leave. And they arrived at the monster's nest. After lighting the torches and entering the nest, Ayla sees for the first time what the place where the monsters live looks like. She didn't understand what they wanted to do here. Claude asked the knight if he was talking about this. The knight replied that he had discovered suspicious tracks. Suddenly, patterns appeared on the ground, and Ayla saw golden pollen in the novel. Golden pollen means a magic trace, and in that case, everything was magic. Ayla wondered what mage would have engraved something like this, and for what purpose. But no mage could do such a thing surrounded by dozens of monsters, so they were engraved before the monster nest appeared here. Claude said that this was an invocation circle. With its help, the monsters were summoned. Ayla asked surprised how he knew this, because he is not a mage. He replied that, but on the battlefield, he fought side by side with mages. They call their pets to attack their enemies. The shape of the magic circle is illogical for these. Ayla was even more surprised that Claude, having seen such intricate magic circles only a couple of times, was able to remember everything in such detail. Claude said that he would have to send a mage here as soon as they returned, and that he would have to carefully check all the mages in his land. He decided that he would make the culprit kneel and beg for mercy. He would definitely find out who this bastard was. Ayla wondered how that could happen, if nothing was mentioned about it in the novel. She wondered why events that had absolutely no connection to the novel kept happening, as if a monster attacked her. But Claude managed to protect her. Then he took her sword and killed the monster, saying that everything was fine now. Ayla started crying upon noticing that he was bleeding nonstop. But Claude himself was angry because he almost arrived late and thought Ayla was not injured. And this was the main thing before losing consciousness. She woke up already in bed and immediately told Ayla that she was probably scared, so she should rest, and all the doctors said that he was fine and that she didn't have to worry. But Ayla was worried because of her, Claude almost said goodbye to his life. And approaching, she told him that she could do something for him, but Claude said that everything was fine, and he asked her to rest. Claude asked why she blamed herself for what happened, and said that it was the fault of the useless bastards who couldn't cope with the monster cub. He said that she should definitely take disciplinary action against the knights who failed in their duties. Ayla thanked him for saving her. Claude replied that he was glad she was safe and sound, because he wouldn't have known what to do if she got hurt. She sat next to him and thought that now she owed him. He saved her. Besides, she didn't want to let him die like that, and she also had to save his life. Can she live pretending she knew nothing about it? She told him that she had made a decision. Ayla thought she had an epiphany when she saw Claude bleeding. Ayla said she would stay by his side. She was sure she couldn't watch Claude die peacefully, and continued that she couldn't tell him how long she would be with him, in any case, while she decided to wait and stay with him. So, in the first place, it is necessary to postpone the divorce, because if she leaves him in such a situation, she will feel uncomfortable in her soul. After avoiding Claude's death, she decides to think about divorce again. Avoiding his death is a completely feasible mission. She will see how Claude's life ends, so she is in an advantageous position. Therefore, maybe she can cope with the task, saving the lives of both Claude and himself. Claude got out of bed and said he was grateful that she had made that decision, that he respected her choice and would try to make sure she didn't change her decision. So that she never wants to leave him, he will do everything possible for it. Although she made this decision that night, she is more determined now. First, she decided to deal with this world and would survive at all costs with Claude. The next day, a priestess came to completely heal Claude's wounds. As the Duke's fame had spread throughout the country, the temple, which did not want relations with his family to deteriorate, immediately sent him a priestess. Ayla greeted the priestess, thanked her for coming, and told her that his lordship was in her room. The priestesses here worship the goddess Rajasa, who is considered the goddess of peace. Priestesses can expel demons with the help of the divine power granted to them, but they can also heal diseases and wounds. To heal wounds as severe as Claude's, she must be a fairly high-ranking priestess. Claude stripped off his clothes, and the priestess began to heal his back, and in the blink of an eye. And closing her eyes, the wound healed as if it had never existed. Ayla was happy, because if the wound had healed, it meant he no longer felt pain. And she thanked the priestess, saying she couldn't even find the words to express her gratitude. As expected of a priestess, she was very modest in both words and deeds. And for some time, she decided to visit her temple. Ayla asked if she could find out her name, and the priestess replied that her name was Siren. Then Siren asked Ayla to speak with her alone. The mermaid asked Ayla for permission to test her energy. The priestess felt that her energy was somehow different from that of other people. It turns out that she felt she had a different energy, and if it was suddenly revealed that she wasn't Ayla, she could be expelled through some kind of ritual. The priestess took Ayla's hands. Ayla felt heat, and the mermaid finished quite quickly. She said that at first, she thought she felt an energy similar to divine power, but after checking it, she realized it was different from hers. Siren asked her if she had noticed any oddity in her body. Ayla thought that the situation where she became Ayla was unusual in itself, but she didn't tell this to the priestess. Of course she didn't say it. The mermaid said that if nothing special happened to her body the whole time, then, perhaps, it was just due to a different spirit than others, because every person has their own spirit, and probably my lady has become the owner of the most extraordinary of them. Siren added, Ayla thought that her spirit was more unique due to the fact that she changed souls, and Siren said she should go to the temple and wished her a good day. After leaving, Ayla exhaled a sigh of relief and decided to return quickly to Claude. But when she went to see him, she saw that he was still changing his clothes and told him she could return a little later. But Claude replied that he was almost dressed. He felt that the atmosphere was a little different from usual, and asked if something had happened. Ayla said she wanted to discuss future plans and that they should talk to Noah first, because he is a very important person to us. The first point of the plan to save them is to use Noah, who can begin to distort the original story. Claude was a little nervous, and Ayla kept saying that she just wanted him to seriously think about what she told him from now on. She asked him if he meant the blacksmith who forged the swords, and Ayla nodded in approval, thinking that valuable talents should be treated properly. And she said that Noah has an exclusive contract with her, so she wants to make sure he doesn't lack anything. And he needs a place to work, so she would like to prepare a new forge soon. It would be fantastic if it became the best and largest forge in the empire. Claude replied that he would do it, and asked if she needed anything. Ayla replied that to produce magic swords, it was necessary to organize an uninterrupted supply of magic stones. Ayla said she was going to study again with Henry how to handle internal affairs, since she was the owner of this estate, and she would try to fulfill her duties. She herself thought that she would do everything as long as she was by his side. She said that it had been a long time since she had done any business, so she had completely forgotten how to work. Claude replied that she could do whatever she wanted, and when Ayla decided to return, Claude stopped her. He said that it seems the blacksmith is important to her, and asked her what his importance was to her. Ayla was surprised why he suddenly asked that question, and suggested that it was all due to the money invested in Noah. In that case, it would be better if she said that he is very important, but not too important. Then she said that he is in third place, because he is a genius like cannot be found in the entire empire. Therefore, if you invest in him now, you will benefit. Ayla hadn't finished speaking when Claude interrupted her. Claude asked her who was first on her list, and Ayla calmly replied that he was second. And Claude asked who was first then. When Ayla started saying that of course she was first, Claude no longer listened to her and asked her not to speak. Claude thought that if they heard the answer, their feelings would only become even more confused. If he was second, then he needed to surround that person, and he himself was embarrassed, thinking that he had to try hard to get first place. Then he said he had important business and had to leave. But at the door, he admitted that he would try not to make her regret her decision to stay by his side. And he swore that he would give everything and do anything for her. Then he again asked her to stay by his side. So, the day came to return to the ducal castle, as Ayla decided to stay with Claude Janice, and Rosen officially became her bodyguards. Ayla thought she felt like she was returning home after a long time. At the castle entrance, Henry greeted Ayla. She got out of the carriage and said she was happy to see him, and it felt like she hadn't seen him in 100 years. Henry also replied that he was happy to see her, and Claude advised her to rest. Ayla returned to her room, and Lena greeted her cheerfully, telling her that she missed her very much, and that she was worried about her. Lena noticed that she was laughing and asked why. Ayla replied that she was simply happy that the city and her family were safe now. Many joyful events are happening, said Ayla, and Lena replied that she had heard all the news, and she was very grateful to her. Ayla said that during all this time, she bravely endured all the difficulties, and now she doesn't need to worry about anything. Lena kept crying, but now she was happy and thanked Ayla for her care. Ayla finally convinced herself that she had made the right decision when she went to the city, but now she was already thinking about how she could save Claude. She wondered why Claude decided to organize a rebellion. Of course, he had to prepare a plot because he wanted to become emperor. Seeing so many differences from the novel, this worries the first prince and Edith a lot. And Claude. Besides, the novel doesn't mention who summoned the monsters, so maybe there is another reason why Claude organized the rebellion. Because he is not a reckless man who commits treason blindly, just because he covets the throne. If it's about power, then he already has enough. Maybe he desires absolute power, or he doesn't like the prince. In that case, she even understands him a little. But whatever the case, that idiot is the main male character of the novel. Besides, if the army has not yet mobilized, even if Claude is really planning treason, everything still seems to be in the planning stages. In this case, she has a chance. The month she promised Claude has already passed, but there are still 5 left before he is executed for treason. First of all, efforts must be made to prevent a riot. Having found evidence of the impending conspiracy, she will have to convince Claude not to do it. But of course, there is no guarantee that he will listen to her. Ayla decided that as long as she was by Claude's side, she had no choice but to simply search for evidence and reasons for the treason. She approached Henry and told him that he probably already heard that she would take care of the residence's internal affairs. Henry himself was very happy and said that he would thoroughly prepare everything so that my lady could calmly return to her business. But when Ayla started, she couldn't imagine that she would have to deal with so many things. She was already thinking of returning to her old routine of eating, walking, and sleeping. But she put those thoughts aside and decided to take it seriously. When Henry taught her how to sort documents, everything seemed easy and made sense. But now, when she reads it herself, she can't understand anything. 2 days later, Noah sent Ayla a letter thanking her for the new forge and describing how excited he was to work there. He thanked her for providing him with so many magic stones, and Noah worked hard every day to meet her expectations. Rosen approached Ayla and asked if she was working too hard, and said that lately she didn't even have time to talk. Ayla replied that nothing could be done about it, not even Henry Alasser, because he had completely stopped playing. She asked him if he knew where Claude was now, and Rosen replied that he was now on the training ground with other knights. And Ayla decided to go there. If Noah makes more magic swords, soon all the knights will be able to use them. Claude noticed Ayla and asked her what she was doing on the training ground, and Ayla replied that she heard he had prepared a new forge for Noah and came to thank him. And Claude replied that he hadn't done anything special because it would be fruitful anyway. Ayla told Rosen that he didn't have to follow her and allowed him to enjoy his free time. And she went for a walk with Claude. Claude said that the investigation yielded no results, except that these are indeed magic circles that cause monsters, the work of a dark mage, because monsters can only be summoned by a warlock practicing forbidden magic. But he doesn't know which sorcerer would dare to do such a thing. Claude said that she didn't have to worry because he was by her side. Ayla asked him if he was telling the other aristocrats about it. He replied that everyone was confused and that this would be talked about a lot at the upcoming banquet in honor of the country's founding. According to the novel, this event will take place in 2 weeks, and maybe she will really find something there. The next day, Ayla went to the jewelry store and thought that, at the banquet in honor of the country's founding, a diamond necklace would be enough. Last time, she put an end to the arrogant behavior of the nobles, so now such things will not happen again. No gem equals this diamond, because it is the most precious stone in the empire, belonging to the trailer of a kingdom fallen 100 years ago. This woman is Fiona. She owns a jewelry salon and is known as a skilled artisan in processing precious stones. Thanks to the fine craftsmanship and beautiful designs, her jewelry was popular with both aristocrats and the imperial family. Ayla gave her diamond and told her she wanted her to make a necklace with that diamond. Fiona immediately recognized Princess Shai's diamond and said it was a great honor to see something like this in real life. Ayla asked to create a necklace of her choice for the Country Foundation Day. The girl thanked her for entrusting her with the diamond and promised to do everything in the best possible way. Claude suggested that she choose something else since they came here, but Ayla said she had enough jewelry. Fiona said that among the jewels in this salad, there was one that would be perfect for her. A beautiful ruby, called the Tear of the Sun, harmonizes perfectly with my lady's fiery hair. And Claude said to take it. And while they were looking at the jewels, the Crown Prince and Edith entered the salon. Ayla immediately became sad, but still bowed and said it was an honor for her to receive the prince. Claude stepped forward and also greeted the prince. Edith didn't stay silent either and said she was delighted to meet them. The prince told Ayla to call him by his name when they met again. It seems he completely forgot about her refusal. Ayla was angry because he decided everything himself without even asking her, and seeing Edith's reaction only made her more nervous. Therefore, Ayla said she didn't remember accepting, and the prince once again ignored her, asking her to contribute to the victory over the monsters in Etherton. The prince said that she was truly amazing, and he knew it since she poured alcohol on that boy's head, and asked her to tell him everything in as much detail as possible. Claude told the prince that if he wanted to keep his body intact, he had better stop showing interest in his wife. So Ayla shut her mouth. She was afraid that this would only worsen their relationship and that a rebellion would come sooner. But the prince simply said that he saw that the couple's relationship was improving. And suddenly, Edith reminded him of her existence, and the prince himself admitted that he had managed to forget about her. Ayla thought they were acting quite strangely. And if you remember the words Edith said during the tea party, she has a romantic relationship with the prince. But so far this is not visible. Claude noticed the way she looked at them, and said that if she looked at other men like that, he would get jealous. Then he touched her hair and said he wanted her to only look at him as much as possible. She agreed, and Claude made arrangements to send all the purchased jewelry to the ducal castle, and they left the salon embracing. In the carriage, Claude asked her if she was interested in the first prince. Ayla replied that she hoped he was joking and asked where he got those thoughts from. Claude replied that the prince looked quite handsome. Ayla thought that no matter how much she liked all beautiful things, she didn't like the prince. She thought that Claude suited her preferences much more and asked him if he thought she would look at a man who already had a mistress. Then Ayla accidentally said out loud, "Is it possible to find a man who is more handsome than Claude?" Realizing that she had said this out loud, she immediately blushed, just like Claude, who did not expect such a confession. After an awkward silence, Ayla said that she didn't like the prince anyway, and asked him to stop talking about it. Then she herself asked if the first prince didn't like him, and Claude calmly replied that, naturally, he couldn't like him under any circumstances. In fact, Claude believes that the first prince is not suitable for the role of emperor. And if you ask about the princess, it will turn out to be too suspicious. Claude continued saying that he didn't like the idiot who had an unnecessary interest in his wife. Ayla decided to clarify her question and asked him if he liked the idea of the first prince becoming the next emperor. Claude gave a rather strange answer to this. He said that this question was a bit dangerous. Ayla realized that it was difficult for him to answer this question. Ayla thought he was too impatient, but Claude suddenly said that if she was there, nothing else mattered to him. Claude said that he officially adheres to neutrality and has no intention of acting in concert with other nobles. But at the same time, he will not bow his head to the emperor either. His words meant that he belonged neither to the imperial family nor to the nobility. Ayla thought, and the same applies to the problem of the heir to the throne. although the forces supporting the prince and the princess are clearly divided. He does not belong to either side. Claude said that he didn't care who became the next emperor, but at least he didn't say anything about his dislike for the prince. And she told him that the prince was quite dissolute and asked him, knowing this, he still didn't care about the fact that he would become emperor. Claude replied that aristocratic society is rife with pretense and disguise, and the imperial family is no exception, and all the prince's actions cannot be taken at face value. Ayla asked what he meant, and Claude replied that maybe the first prince was behaving this way on purpose. She asked him why he said something like that, and Claude said that the first prince changed precisely after the death of the second prince. Since childhood, he was told he had a good memory, but after the death of the second prince, Jay started acting like an idiot. Ayla asked if the second prince died due to an accident. Claude replied that there was a carriage accident, and he died at the age of 14. Still very young, the second prince drew attention for his outstanding talents in various fields. Moreover, he was the spitting image of the empress. However, he died young at the age of 14. Such a description is given in the novel. The accident turns out to be a carriage accident. On the day of the second prince's death, there was a national celebration for the founding of the country. After the banquet, the young man left the palace, accompanied to witness the celebration. But the problem was that it rained heavily that night. On the way back to the palace, the carriage passed by the river. The wet road was slippery, which caused the tragedy. The first prince was only 2 years older than the second, which means Jay was only 16 when he died in that accident. In that case, the death of his younger brother changed him. Ayla said that if he was shocked by his death, then the change in his behavior could be understood. Claude said that this could be one of the reasons, and said that the second prince left the palace with only minor preparations to observe the celebration in secret. But what if there was someone who knew about his actions in advance? Ayla asked him if he thought someone planned that accident. Claude replied that there was something strange about the accident. When the search party went down and found the bodyguard's body, there was a stab wound on his body. But it was difficult to confirm, as the body had been in the water for too long, and the investigation yielded nothing for them. Moreover, some time later the empress, who was investigating the accident, suddenly died. Some say she was poisoned, and the emperor, who couldn't find out anything about her death, he chose to close the case. And it was during that period that the prince changed. He must have thought that someone had disguised his brother's death as an accident. There is clearly an uncertain aspect to this death, which means there are people who threaten the imperial family. The forces were powerful enough to take the life of the prince and the empress. That's why it is possible that the prince decided to try to survive this way. He decided to become reckless and act like an idiot. In fact, he seemed completely normal when talking to Edith, even though their relationship was quite awkward. Of course, this is just his assumption, but the imperial family is a complex place, so this possibility cannot be completely ruled out. Even if the prince intended this, his actions are still unpleasant to Claude, especially the fact that he is trying to get close to Ayla. Claude said that, as expected, it would be much better if the princess became the emperor's successor. It was surprising to learn that the prince could simply be pretending, but there was something else that surprised him even more. He remembered how Claude said that he didn't care who would become the next emperor, but he still decided to rebel. Ayla was tired of those thoughts and decided to take a short nap and then think about everything again. But when she opened her eyes, she saw Claude, who had gathered his army. This scene is a prelude to the end of the novel, the part where Claude tries to rebel. But the prince attacks him and kills him. It seems he is going to lead his army to the imperial palace, but they could never get there, because the prince attacked the duchy before Claude advanced with the army. Suddenly, Claude declared that the emperor was cruel and that the corrupt imperial family was rotten to the roots. Claude continued saying that in this way, he would clean up this rot with the blood of the reigning family. Ayla stepped forward and tried to talk to Claude. However, Claude said that he would cut off his head and soak the throne in blood. And then, he would kill all members of the imperial family to stain the imperial palace with their blood. He decided to show everyone what the wrath of the Reinhardt family is. Ayla wondered what he was talking about, and when the imperial family would harm the duchy. Ayla tried to stop Claude again and told him that he would fail. One of the knights approached Claude and told him that he had received a report that the prince, at the head of an army, had invaded the duchy's territory. Apparently, there was an information leak. In any case, he will reach the castle soon. Claude became angrier and said that he still wanted to kill all members of the imperial family, and decided to finish him first and then go to the palace. So, Claude ordered his army to prepare for battle, and said that the prince had invaded their territory. He shouted that his soldiers would not let fear bend them. After he beheaded the prince, they would go to the palace. The battle was already in full swing, and Ayla saw Claude standing next to the prince. The prince asked him why he decided to rebel. Claude replied that he dared not ask about such a thing, because he himself knew everything perfectly. The prince said he perfectly understood that the probability of failure was high, and that if he lost, all his people would die, and he asked if he really didn't care about his people. And by reminding him that his wife would be executed just like him, Claude said that he shouldn't dare to talk about Ayla because she is important to him. Claude said he would not tremble with fear because of a scoundrel like him. The prince used his magic sword and attacked Claude. The prince admitted that Claude was really strong. There was no other monster like him. But then the prince said that his people would not be able to resist. Ayla noticed that Claude would face difficulties effortlessly. However, even though his knights are resisting better than expected, they already look quite exhausted. Claude told the prince to stop barking, and the prince attacked the duke again. But with a sword like Claude's, he wouldn't last long, and that's what happened. The prince managed to wound Claude. Claude asked him not to touch Ayla, because he was the one who planned everything. He said that Ayla knew nothing, so he only asked to leave her alone. The prince apologized, but said it was no longer up to him and that he couldn't do anything, even if it was his will. Ayla started shouting at the prince that he had just killed him, and now he said he couldn't do anything. She ran to Claude and begged him not to close his eyes. She hugged Claude with tears in her eyes and begged him not to die. Suddenly, someone called her. At first, Ayla thought it was the mermaid priestess, but then she realized it wasn't. That girl asked Ayla if she could prevent Claude's imminent death, and Ayla shouted to her that she was willing to do anything and asked what she should do about it. And so she woke up. She thought she had dreamed of the novel's plot, but the dream was too clear. And besides, that dialogue was not in the novel. After all, maybe that dream was an illusion invented by her, and there was also a girl who looked like Siren. As soon as Ayla got dressed, she ran to Claude's office. Claude asked her why she looked so pale. Claude stroked her hair and asked her if she was sick. Ayla replied that she was fine. She was glad that Claude was fine and asked him how he felt. Claude replied that he was as healthy as an ox. Ayla apologized for coming to him so unexpectedly, because he was probably busy with work. But Claude replied that even if he was busy, she could still come to him. He saw a letter on the table and asked what kind of letter it was. Claude replied that it was a message from the temple, all because the duchy makes decent monetary donations, so he received a letter of thanks. It was Ayla who donated the money. Nothing special is written there. The ministers are grateful for the money and want to express their gratitude, so they invite him to the temple at any time. And she is tormented by that moment in her dream. The woman who looked so much like Siren, who turned out to be too much like her. Ayla asked him if he could give her some time and suggested they go to the temple together. Claude asked why she wanted to go there. Ayla replied that she personally would like to see the temple, and Claude suggested going there immediately after lunch. Then, Ayla surprised him by inviting him to lunch together. She said she was worried that he would skip meals and that she wanted to take care of her husband. At lunch, Claude asked her why she came to see him in the morning. Ayla said it was nothing special and that he didn't have to pay attention to her. Of course, it wasn't a common dream at all, but it seems she will look funny if she says she came running to him because of some kind of nightmare. But Claude said she could tell him everything, and Ayla asked him not to laugh and told him she had a nightmare. Ayla said she saw something she never wanted to see. Claude replied that a dream was just a dream, and what happened in the dream could not affect her in any way. Claude said that he was close and that, no matter what happened, under no circumstances would he allow this to happen. Ayla said that Claude must definitely keep his word, and she herself thought that she had done the right thing by coming to him. Then they went to the temple. The priest greeted them and told them that they felt honored that she had decided to honor them with her visit. There was no need to provide such a warm welcome. Apparently, the amount of money was much greater than she thought. Ayla said she would like to explore the temple and also wants to see Siren to thank her for her help. The priest said that he could tell Siren to show her the temple himself. The priestess Siren came to accompany them. Serena said she was happy to see her again. Ayla said she was also happy to see them and thanked her again for her help. Serena replied that she had been informed that she wanted to inspect the temple and asked her to follow Anya. This is a standard prayer room for visitors. Those who come to the temple usually pray to the goddess here. While Siren was talking about the temple, Ayla thought that she really looked a lot like the girl in her dream. Ayla asked if this door could be opened so easily for strangers. Serena replied that only guests who had received permission were allowed to enter. It turns out that donations are the standard that determines whether guests are special or not. Ayla said she saw most of the priests. She noticed that only she had this hair color and asked if there was any reason for this phenomenon. Although even among them, Siren has the whitest hair like snow. Siren replied that the color symbolizing the goddess is white, and that color appears when faith is strong. This is logical, because Siren also has powerful divine power. But Ayla also seems to remember that the girl's hair was snow white in her dream. Suddenly, Ayla saw a beautiful bracelet and felt the desire to take it, something she had never felt before. Serena said she could pray here, and Ayla asked what kind of bracelet it was. This is the goddess's bracelet. Ayla thought that she had guessed the object, located in the middle of the special prayer room. Ayla asked if it was possible to leave such a thing in the prayer room. Serena said it was completely safe, as it was protected by the Holy Scriptures. It has been a long time since the defenses were strengthened with dozens of additional barriers. And even if everyone joined forces, they wouldn't be able to break the barrier. Moreover, even if the barrier breaks, it is impossible to remove the bracelet from the altar due to the sacred symbols engraved around it. The reason the bracelet is here, the sacred relic strengthens the faith of the people. Feeling the divine energy inside just by looking at it seemed strange to Ayla, because she feels nothing except that she wants it for herself. There is another reason, namely the prediction that when a bracelet was found in the temple a long time ago, the goddess's prophecy was passed down through the lips of the high priestess. It says that in an era of chaos, someone will appear who will become the owner of the bracelet, and it will be him who will establish the world order. That's why, following this prediction, the goddess's bracelet was placed in a special room until the owner appeared. Ayla unconsciously took a step forward. Ayla heard that same voice again and took another step forward. And suddenly, the crystal broke despite the barrier. Suddenly, the bracelet flew and ended up in Ayla's hand. Everyone was confused and couldn't say anything. Ayla was also surprised and thought she just wanted to look at the bracelet, but she didn't intend to take it. However, if you look at the situation she is in now, she looks like a thief who stole the bracelet. Claude said that the barrier collapsed suddenly, so this process might affect her in some way. He asked if anything hurt her. Ayla replied that everything was fine, and Claude asked how this happened. Ayla said that she didn't understand anything herself. Suddenly, 3 priests burst into the prayer room and began shouting at them to explain what happened. They shouted at Ayla asking why she stole the bracelet. Ayla replied that she hadn't stolen anything and that it was all a misunderstanding. They shouted at her that the bracelet was in her hand, so there couldn't be any misunderstanding. Claude told them to shut up and ordered them not to raise their voices to his wife. The man shouted that she had released killing energy in the holy temple and asked if he really wanted to turn the temple into his enemy. Claude replied that he could, since they treat the mistress of the Reinhardt house like a thief. Ayla explained that she had no intention of stealing the bracelet, and the man said she must explain herself. Claude told him that if he wanted to save his tongue, he had better be more polite. Ayla asked him to calm down and wondered why he was behaving like that, because you can't resist the temple. Besides, according to the novel, Claude is destined to lose, so he must maintain friendly relations with the temple. And Ayla said that she really didn't do anything. She doesn't know how to break the barrier. She simply raised her hand, and suddenly the barrier broke, and the bracelet flew in her direction. And the priestess Siren also saw everything, how suddenly the barrier disappeared. And Siren replied that everything was like that. Besides, she had no desire to own the goddess's bracelet, and she herself doesn't understand how the bracelet ended up in her hand. The man said that from her words, it follows that the barrier had stopped working. Another said that the barrier had been installed a long time ago. Ayla said that she never really wanted this bracelet, so she will take it off immediately. Starkey said he would take it off, but Claude replied that he himself would take the bracelet off. But Ayla refused and decided to take it off herself. But when she tried to take it off, for some reason the bracelet didn't come off. Ayla said that probably her hands were sweaty and she couldn't untie them. And she asked Claude for help. But Claude couldn't take the bracelet off either. She said that apparently her hands were also sweaty, and the old man said he would take it off himself. However, the old man couldn't do anything either, and offered to cut off Ayla's wrist to get it off there. And Claude, of course, began to threaten him with beheading. The man said that nothing could break the goddess's bracelet. They checked it personally. Ayla was worried that she would have to wear it her whole life. The mermaid suggested that maybe it was a matter of prophecy. If the prediction came true, then Milady is the owner of the bracelet. Leaving the goddess's bracelet in a special prayer room because of the prophecy was just a formal reason. Because they did it for money. Ayla was surprised that money was the real reason and wondered if they weren't too worldly. Starkey said that besides, the prophecy was that the owner of the bracelet would correct the times of chaos. But now the world is calm. Siren asked if they didn't know that some sorcerers had summoned demonic monsters, and therefore, this era could legitimately be considered an era of chaos. Ayla was surprised that Serena tried to support her, because she had no reason to do so. Her goal is to save Claude. He doesn't want to become the one to end the chaos. She doesn't need such a heavy burden of responsibility on her shoulders. The priest said it was strange that the Duke received the bracelet, because he shed so much blood in the battles. The old man said that if the owner of the bracelet, then my lady should try to use her divine power. The man said that if my lady could do this, then there would be no doubt that she was the owner of the bracelet. Shouldn't they at least tell her how to use it? She began to imitate what she saw other priestesses using their magic. However, no matter how hard she tried, nothing happened. Ayla said that probably she was not the owner of the bracelet and asked how she could take it off. The man replied that they themselves don't know. No one has sought the bracelet so far. They will first have to leave everything as it is for a while. Claude ordered them to take this off her wrist right now, or soon there would be no temple left in the empire. He accused them of not having installed a good barrier themselves, but daring to treat his wife like a thief, even though they themselves didn't know how to remove it. Apparently they crave death. The priests apologized for what happened and said they still don't know why the barrier disappeared. Claude asked if they didn't install it, and now they say they don't know why. The old man apologized and said that everyone was figuring out how to safely remove the bracelet, and asked to reduce his anger. Claude said that if they didn't succeed, he would turn the temple into ruins. And then, the old man said that they would try to solve the problem quickly, but that for now, just in case, they would assign a priestess to the Duchess, since the bracelet might have other changes. Serena said that in this case she would stay close to the Duchess, and so they did. They left the temple, and Ayla was sad because now, because of this trip, she only had one more worry. Ayla asked how they plan to hide this situation. If what happened becomes public, they will find themselves in a difficult situation. Serena said that, for now they plan to close the special prayer room where the goddess's bracelet was located. And during this time, they will try to make an imitation of it. But even if there is a fake, the plan is unlikely to work since she is wearing a bracelet. And in 2 weeks she will go to a banquet. Ayla asked if this would really work because she had the bracelet. Serena replied that few people had seen the relic. Only a few were allowed to see the goddess's bracelet. Ayla thought it was good that it was placed in a special prayer room. Even if someone recognizes the bracelet, they will probably think it is an elaborate copy. Ayla said that people will not be fooled for long. Serena said that at least she hopes that during this time, they will find a way to remove the bracelet. Claude said that everything will be fine, but he still can't believe what happened and everyone will have to work hard. The mermaid fell, and Ayla asked why she volunteered to accompany her. And she replied that she actually believes she obtained the bracelet because she has an unusual energy. If you think about it, the last time Serena said she felt a special energy emanating from her. The person who becomes the lord of the sacred relic must have an outfit that is different from that of ordinary people. Ayla started to worry a little and thought about what she meant by that. Siren said that she believes the person referred to in the prophecy is her. She said with confidence that she believes she is the owner of the bracelet. Ayla said that this is impossible because she can't even use the sacred relic. But Serena still believed that she was the mistress. Ayla wondered why Serena, who seemed quite suitable, was behaving this way. And then the mermaid said she was going to see how the prophecy came true. Claude was also worried and asked her if she was okay, and said that if something happened to her, she should tell him. Ayla said she was completely fine, and remembered that she was repeating this for the 13th time. And the priestess also said that everything would be fine. She said that in the temple, she promised to do everything possible to remove the bracelet from her hand as soon as possible. Ayla advised him not to worry. Claude said he couldn't help but worry, because what happened had a direct relation to her. They returned to the duchy, and Henry, as always, greeted them and was surprised to see the priestess. Ayla told him the whole situation and asked him to assign her a room where she could perform her daily prayers. Henry said he would take her to the room assigned to her. Ayla remained worried about what had happened. Claude said that in the palace, except for him and the priestess, no one else saw the sacred relic, so she can be at ease. And only the banquet causes concern, because all the high-ranking nobles will gather at this event, and they may recognize the relic. Ayla said she can say she made an imitation bracelet. Almost no one can determine its authenticity. Besides, Ding might find a way to remove the bracelet by then. So she asked him not to worry. Claude said that she was probably tired from such an unexpected incident, and Ayla apologized for the fact that he had so many troubles because of her. But Claude replied that she hadn't done anything wrong, so she didn't need to apologize. Ayla blushed and thought that it was probably because Claude's eyes were on her, or because he was touching her cheek. It occurred to her that she wanted to stay by Claude's side for as long as possible, but she said out loud that it was time to leave. Ayla lay down on the bed and thought that he shouldn't behave like that, and that he, unlike others, treats her warmly. This makes her heart beat faster. Perhaps Claude is trying to show his closeness this way, and not because he loves her. And if she hadn't spoken of divorce, he wouldn't have treated her this way. He just realized that Ayla was also a person who could disappear at any moment. Later that night, Claude called Ayla's room and asked for permission to enter. Ayla wondered why he had come so late. Claude entered the room and said he hadn't gone to bed yet. Ayla said she was just getting ready to go to bed. Then Claude said he came to put her to bed, took a stool, and said that she said she had a nightmare. So he came here to stay by her side until she fell into the kingdom of Morpheus. He helped her lie down and sat on a chair and advised her to sleep. Now she is not alone and can feel safe. Claude said that he would take away her bad nightmares so she wouldn't have to worry. Ayla felt comfortable, but when Claude told her not to worry about anything and that he would protect her, fear enveloped her. For a second, she was paralyzed by fear, as if she had already heard these words before. Claude realized and asked if something had happened, but Ayla, a little confused, said everything was fine. Definitely the day was too busy, and apparently it was a hallucination. So she took his hand and asked him to stay close. Ayla asked him to lie down next to her instead of sitting on a chair, and she became convinced that it was nothing special. She said she was even more frightened thinking that someone was sitting on a chair watching her. Claude asked if he could do this. Ayla replied that she allowed it. He replied that he would be there until she fell asleep. Claude lay down next to her, and Ayla asked him to hold her hand. So they spent the night together, and in the morning, Ayla woke up early and saw that Claude was not near. Apparently he returned when she fell asleep, and the bracelet was still on her hand. Ayla got up and Henry asked permission to enter. Ayla allowed it. Then she asked where the priestess was. Henry replied that she had just performed a ritual. She asked him to take care of her breakfast, but then said it would be better if he personally invited her to have a cup of tea with her. Henry ordered tea to be brought to the ladies' room. Ayla entered the ladies' room and offered to have tea with her. They sat down, and Ayla immediately asked if there was any news from the temple. Serena replied that only one day had passed. Of course, they hadn't found anything yet. Serena replied that she hadn't received any message yet, but as soon as there was any news, she would inform her immediately. Ayla herself realized that she was waiting in vain for quick news, because the barrier that hadn't broken for decades was destroyed yesterday. So Ayla said she was interested in the fact that in the first meeting, she said, she felt an unusual energy in her body. But the other priestesses said nothing about it. Ayla asked if she could be mistaken, and Siren replied that she knew that the color white symbolizes the goddess, and her color is much lighter than others. Thanks to the goddess's love, this hair color was given to her since birth. Therefore, she has stronger senses and more powerful divine power than others, and therefore, she can feel things that others cannot feel. Ayla then asked if she thought she would attend the banquet in honor of the country's founding. Serena replied that what happened with the bracelet left them no choice. Ayla thought that, after all, this had already been agreed upon, and that maybe it would be more useful if they were there. Serena said that the plan was for her to join a group of priests, and they would arrive at the event together to see each other on the day of the banquet. Ayla thought it would be much more natural for her and the priests to arrive separately, although the mermaid remained in the ducal palace, under the pretext of consecration. The day of the banquet in honor of the country's founding was approaching. On the eve of the event, the mermaid returned to the temple to join the other priests. And on the day before the banquet, Ayla was very busy. The maids surrounded Ayla and told her they would prepare rose petals for her bath. Lena asked her to try on a new dress. It seems the maids liked the preparation more than Ayla. Suddenly, one of them said that Princess Shai had sent a necklace with a diamond. She opened the box and saw how Mrs. Fiona had worked on her diamond. Ayla said that Fiona was worth double credit for her craftsmanship. She thought that no one could ignore her presence with such decoration, and said she was looking forward to tomorrow's banquet. The day of the banquet arrived, and the maids worked all morning on Ayla's look. She wore a yellow dress matching her hair color. After putting on the ring, the tender words that Claude whispered to her at that moment came to mind. And suddenly, a shiver ran down her body. The words that touched her to the bottom and left a bitter aftertaste were full of sincerity. His sincere voice sounded sincere, and his gaze was directed solely at Ayla. Ayla thought she should stop mentioning that topic, because that would only complicate her confused feelings. Lena asked if she would go to the banquet with this bracelet on her hand. She thought that Ayla really liked the bracelet, so she didn't take it off. Ayla hoped that during the banquet, she could also easily evade unnecessary questions. Afterwards, Ayla left her room and saw Claude, who was waiting for her as usual. He said she looked beautiful, and Ayla said he also looked elegant. Claude said it was an honor to hear such praise. These words made Ayla's heart beat fast again. When she raised her hand, Claude noticed she was wearing that ring. Ayla said he gave it to her, so she put it on. Then Claude took her hand and said she looked perfect. Then they went to the banquet, and Ayla noticed that the palace looked more luxurious than usual. Then they entered the palace, and people immediately started staring at them. Claude started to worry, but Ayla said she wasn't that weak and asked not to worry. The girls started commenting that it was the first time they saw such a smile on the Duke. And they remembered that there were rumors that they got along badly. They said that even at the tea party, the Duke himself came to look for his wife. And then they noticed that Ayla had Princess Shai's diamond on her neck. One of them asked her if she was sure it was the same diamond, and the other replied that by its brilliance and size, one could immediately recognize the right diamond. And there is also the tear of the sun, that ruby that was given at the jewelry store. Such a stone is hard to come by even for high-ranking nobles. They also noticed the bracelet and said it looked cheap, and assumed it came from a bankrupt family, and had no idea what the harmony of jewels was. Were they talking about Ayla, standing next to her? Ayla thought that they didn't even know they were looking at the goddess's bracelet. Suddenly, one of the girls said that Count Erder had also arrived at today's banquet. Count Erder is the father of the real Ayla. For some reason, this news scared Ayla a lot. The girls continued to say that they had heard that the noble duchess had never deigned to pay attention to the count after her marriage. Ayla was surprised that the count attended the event. Ayla's father, the count, was not assigned any role in the novel. Besides, it was stated that he never appeared at official events, as he became the subject of ridicule by the nobility after his family was on the verge of bankruptcy. She wondered how an aristocrat with such a reputation managed to attend the foundation banquet. And if he realized that she wasn't real, then she would be in trouble. Now they said that Ayla, who married Claude to pay off her family's debt, never visited the count after her marriage. This plumage is too different from the image of the real Ayla described in the novel. In the novel, Ayla married Claude for the good of her family, and most likely it was a forced marriage, so she doesn't feel any affection for the count. Indeed, if he is a father who, without thinking of the future, incurred huge debts, then he sold his daughter. Whereas, as stated, Ayla doesn't like her father. Apparently, the plan according to which she was going to go to her family's palace after the divorce and live a comfortable life there was frustrated. Ayla held Claude's hand and wondered if she should sell some gems, and decided to be more careful if she met her father. Then the emperor, the first prince, and Princess Dorsha arrived. They sat at the table, and the emperor began his speech. He said he was glad that everyone had gathered for the country's founding day, and he promised, like the previous emperors who defended it, that he too would sacrifice his life for the good of the empire. Then, Ditoria stood up and asked to enjoy this banquet, and raised her glass in honor of the start of the celebration. A boy approached Ayla and offered her champagne. Ayla politely declined, and told Claude that the atmosphere was freer than she thought. It's strange, so different from her assumptions, that there is an opinion that the national day of the country's founding is a happy day. Therefore, everyone prefers to freely enjoy pleasure. And then Ayla noticed that the temple with the mermaid had already arrived. Suddenly, Ayla felt uncomfortable and hugged Claude again, when she noticed her father approaching them. Her father immediately started shouting at her that at least he knew how much her father missed her. He continued shouting at her while saying that he missed her. At that moment, she learned for the first time that Count Urter had been writing letters to the real Ayla for a year. Apparently, she ignored his letters, so he stopped writing them. Then he tried to touch her, but Claude stopped him and told him that he must first show respect to his wife. The Count began to shout that this was his daughter, and the father only wanted to talk to his daughter. Ayla thought that he didn't participate in official events because he didn't want to be ridiculed by other nobles. And she asked him what he wanted to tell her. The Count said he had a very important conversation. Ayla asked Claude to wait and told him she wanted to talk to her father. Still, it seems to her that he will not be happy to reveal it if Claude goes with them. After all, he made it clear that the conversation only concerns her. Claude let go of her hand and said he would accompany her to the entrance of the terrace. When they went out onto the terrace, the Count asked her if she was going to completely disobey the order. Ayla, of course, didn't understand anything. She said she didn't remember something correctly and asked what order he was talking about. The Count started shouting at her not to pretend and asked if she was really so in love with the Duke that she disobeyed the Emperor's orders. He said that they were in a very regrettable situation and that, in any case, since all this was done for the good of the family, she would also have to sacrifice her life. Ayla thought that he himself had wasted all the money and incurred huge debts. And now he was saying this, and saying that his family was now the ducal family of Reinhardt. Moreover, she is not sure that her father will offer her the same price. The Count asked her if she had defected to the Duke's side. Ayla replied that there was no reason to sacrifice her only body for the sake of a clan that wasn't even her family anymore. The Count said that he only asked to share news about the Duke, and that she couldn't do it for her own good either. Although he said news, it is actually no different from espionage. She said she wasn't going to become a spy. The Count said she was exaggerating, and that she should just tell him what was happening in the palace. Then he said that she must definitely do as he says, and he left now due to the mention of the Emperor. Ayla felt uncomfortable. She wondered if there was a reason why the Count should take such risks to obtain information about the ducal family. Ayla realized that clearly something was wrong here when Claude approached her and asked her if everything was fine and what they had talked about with the Count. Claude saved her life and believed in her all this time. But will Claude trust her? Then, Ayla decided that it would be best to tell Claude that the Count had asked her for information about the ducal family. But the banquet hall is full of nobles, and this is not the best place for such a conversation. And Ayla said she would tell him everything when they returned home. Claude touched her cheek and said that if she was in a bad mood, they could go home immediately. She replied that there was no problem and suggested that they return to the banquet hall, and decided that she wanted to enjoy the celebration. When they returned, Ayla saw the prince among the crowd, but was surprised that he wasn't acting as usual, and she remembered that the second prince died outside the palace walls due to an accident while participating in a party celebrating the founding of the country. It turns out that for the first prince, today is the day of his younger brother's death, which is a little sad, although Ayla was thinking of checking at the next meeting if the prince was really pretending. But for now, it's worth postponing this plan, because now the prince looks depressed, and Ayla decided not to bother him. Therefore, Ayla suggested that Claude move to the other side. But then the prince approached her and greeted Ayla with the same bright smile. Ayla greeted him and thought that he had been sad until that moment, and that maybe his usual behavior was acting. Then, the prince noticed the Duke and greeted him. Claude did the same. Claude asked him how he was, and the prince replied that, of course, everything was fine for him, and people started whispering that it seemed the Duke would defect to the Empire's side. So Claude decided to quickly move away from him. Suddenly, the prince saw the bracelet and said it looked like he had seen it somewhere before, and he assumed that she was in the prayer room. Ayla was worried that he might recognize the bracelet, and the prince asked if he could look at it more closely. Although Ayla assumed that among those gathered in the hall, there would be people who would recognize the bracelet, she didn't expect it to be the prince who paid attention to her. Claude apologized and said he had to refuse the request, and they told the prince that if it was a simple bracelet, then why couldn't he look at it? Then Ayla said that, in fact, she also recently visited a prayer team, and that she was inspired by the bracelet she saw there, so she ordered a copy of the jewelry. She didn't want to admit that she had made a fake bracelet, but she had no other choice. The prince said that it couldn't be distinguished from a relic, probably because he saw the original. But fortunately, he didn't understand anything. Suddenly, someone uttered the prince's name, and both Ayla and the prince turned bewildered. It was Edith, who was very upset to see the interest the prince was showing in another girl. Edith said that he had never looked at her with the same smile, and ran off crying. Ayla started shouting at the prince why he was standing there, and if he was going to run after her. If you think about it, the prince's attitude towards Edith at the jewelry store was also strange. As soon as she uttered a single sentence, the prince immediately fell silent. And now the same thing is happening. Maybe Edith somehow influences him. Ayla pushed the prince, telling him he should go talk to her. It seems the prince still hasn't come to his senses, and Ayla was worried she wouldn't be able to explain everything to him in this state. Claude asked her what she was going to do, and Ayla replied that she thought he should go after Edith and explain everything to her. Then Claude replied that he would also go with her, because he didn't want her to be alone with the prince. They went out into the garden, and Ayla noticed them in the distance. The prince was telling Edith that he wasn't interested in anyone. Ayla didn't hear anything because she was far away, and when she wanted to get closer, that palace boy touched her. Claude asked her if she had twisted her ankle, and when she replied negatively, he told the boy that he had been too careless and should be more careful. The boy apologized, and Ayla said everything was fine and that he was probably surprised, and invited him to return to his duties. Ayla asked Claude to be understanding, because the boy was still very young, but then she noticed that her bracelet was glowing. But then he returned with Edith and the prince. Edith shouted why he was showing such a special attitude towards the Duchess. Ayla decided to explain everything to Edith herself, and said that she thought she had misunderstood everything. But suddenly, Ayla noticed that the servant behind the prince and Edith suddenly began to use dark magic. Claude immediately rushed towards her, and the boy threw his first blow, but Ayla raised her hand. And she managed to protect Claude, the prince, and Edith. She herself didn't understand how she managed to stop the blow, but the boy wasn't going to stop. And again, he was preparing the next blow, but Ayla raised her hand again and managed to dissipate all the dark sorcerer's magic. Ayla was not only able to repel his attacks, but also to attack the boy herself. She managed to use the divine relic, at which point the knights came running, and they arrested the boy. The priests who were there and saw everything started calling Ayla the owner of the bracelet, and they repeated that the prophecy was coming true. People started looking at Ayla and saying that she was wearing that bracelet from the prayer mandate. And they also started talking about the prophecy. A girl said that now there is no time to discuss all this, because the lady just stopped the dark sorcerer and saved her highness. In reality, Ayla didn't intend to save the prince. She was just trying to protect herself. And Claude, they started applauding her and said that she probably hid her abilities so as not to attract too much attention. And they started praising her for her modesty. Ayla didn't particularly like this attention. Suddenly, Siren and other priests approached her, and Siren said that the temple swears with all its might to support the owner of the sanctuary. Suddenly, the emperor himself appeared in the garden and asked what all this meant. A man ran up to him and told him that a sorcerer had entered the banquet disguised as a waiter and had tried to kill the prince. Then, the emperor ordered the sorcerer to be brought, and Ayla remembered that the novel said that the emperor himself was an exceptional mage, so he could maintain such a youthful appearance. A sorcerer was brought before the emperor, and his magic was dispelled, who also concealed his true face with magic. The sorcerer laughed and said that the emperor couldn't find anything out, and suddenly fell to the ground, and died with a poison capsule in his mouth. The emperor ordered his corpse to be examined, and shouted that he would never turn a blind eye to what happened, and that he would definitely find everything out. Then he approached Ayla and told her that her achievement today would never be forgotten. He called her the heroine of the imperial family, who saved the prince. Ayla only formally replied that it was a great honor for her to hear such words from the emperor. The emperor said that the celebration had been ruined by an accident, and he decided to put an end to today's banquet. Suddenly, the prince approached Ayla and surprisingly, seriously, thanked her for saving him. And Edith, Ayla was surprised that the prince thanked her so much. She felt as if she was facing a complete stranger. Claude and Ayla came to her karate, and Siren said that she believed she was the owner of the relic. Ayla asked if they had figured out how to remove the bracelet, but Siren said there was no reason to do so now that the owner had it, and asked to visit the temple for a short time. Siren said that maybe the goddess would give Ayla some message. Ayla thought she needed to find more information about the bracelet, so she really needed to go to the temple. And the same goes for the power with which she defeated the dark sorcerer. And if you think about it, when she touched the sorcerer, the bracelet shone. So she told Siren that when she touched the dark sleeve, the bracelet started to shine. Serena replied that maybe through touch, she felt an aura of black magic. Ayla asked if that meant the bracelet could neutralize the sorcerer's magic. Since it is the power of the goddess that cleanses the world of evil, the sacred relic purifies black magic and turns it into nothing. The divine power of the goddess is deadly to evil creatures like sorcerers and demonic monsters. This is probably the reason why she was able to defeat the dark sorcerer. Ayla wondered why such incidents kept happening to her, since she is a minor character. Ayla said she used the power of the bracelet. It doesn't mean that she is its owner, but Siren said there is no doubt. That's the law. The chronicles clearly state that only the owner of the relic can use the power of the bracelet. Moreover, after passing through dozens of barriers, it flew directly towards her. The temple will soon make an official statement that Duchess Ayla Reinhardt is a sacred relic. So, Siren asked to visit the temple in the near future. The temple will always support the owner of the relic. Claude said that the carriage was already waiting for them, and that she was trembling all over, and suggested that she herself still hadn't realized how surprised she was. Ayla was very upset and wondered why such incidents were happening, because in the novel, this didn't happen at all. The characters' personalities are also different. There are additional stories, like the mysterious death of the second prince and the empress. Monsters first appeared in Etherton, which were summoned. Now she knows the sorcerer. Claude offered to carry her, as she found it difficult to walk. Ayla felt embarrassed and said she was truly amazed, but not that much. So she could go. Then Claude offered her his hand and told her that if things got difficult, she could tell him at any time. As soon as he noticed the presence of the dark sorcerer, Claude immediately covered her with his body. This time he again tried to protect her, not worrying about his own safety. Fortunately, she was able to use the power of the bracelet, but she can't even imagine what would have happened if she hadn't been able to use the relic. Ayla said she was a little surprised and asked how Claude felt. He replied that he was fine. Ayla said that he was probably surprised, but Claude replied that he was used to this. He had already survived many assassination attempts, although this time everything was different, because he was not the target. To some extent, Ayla assumed that Claude's life had been quite difficult. He lost his family at an early age and obtained a power he didn't desire. But Ayla didn't expect to have faced the fact that someone tried to kill him so often that it had already become a habit. So Ayla told Claude not to worry anymore, because now she will protect him. Claude replied that such words calmed his soul, thanked her, and suggested that she should rest a little now. Getting into the carriage, Ayla asked him what she should do now, because if she really is the owner of the relic, this could complicate their lives. There are already many people who distrust the strength of the Duke's family, and even the temple has said it will side with her, a combination of the second most powerful ducal house, after the imperial family, and a temple that holds an important position in the empire. Claude said she didn't need to worry about that. If they were going to hold her family, they couldn't leave a single scratch on the Duke's house. Ayla said that his words reassured her. Claude said that she always surprises him. She replied that she herself did not expect to become the owner of the relic. Claude said that this was also worthy of surprise, but he was going to say that she slept with him, so he wanted to thank her. He got up and walked towards her. Ayla thought he was going to kiss her and closed her eyes. However, he simply stroked her hair, leaned back on his seat, and said that it was the first time someone had saved him. And although up to this point, there were many people who tried to protect him, in the end he lost them all. So he wanted to thank her, and said that in the Imperial Garden he was really scared because he thought he couldn't protect her. Even in front of the dark sorcerer, he acted as if he wanted to protect her from possible danger with his body. And she decided to protect Claude with all her might, and he said he only needed her to be safe. The next day, the temple announced Ayla Reinhardt as the owner of the relic. It was natural for people to be surprised by such unexpected news, and in the end, since she turned out to be the owner of the relic, it turns out that she destroyed the seal with her own hands. And it was not another person, but she who became the owner of the goddess's bracelet. From the countess, whose family was on the verge of bankruptcy, to the duchess, who was nothing more than a beautiful addition, the woman has not received an inch of recognition. She remembered how the other ladies discussed how she wore Princess Shai's diamond necklace, and how her relationship with the Duke had improved. But besides this, there was something else that greatly astonished everyone, and when this fact spread, A commotion started in the Duke's castle. Lena looked at the bracelet in surprise, and Ayla said she could touch it. But Lena politely refused, because the bracelet is a sacred relic. Rosen was also surprised, and asked her how she could have obtained the relic in the first place. Ayla replied that the bracelet flew to her on its own. Henry said that he was also surprised, and said that by becoming a mistress, she had attracted the interest of many nobles. He said that many letters were sent to her, but that now she must be careful because the temple is completely on her side, and everyone will be watching her actions. The Reinhardt family is neutral and does not wish to be friends with people who have ignored Ayla until now, and they asked her to put the letters in order. Henry said he had received a letter from Lady Edith. He said that he heard she had saved her, and asked what he should do with the letter. Ayla really saved her and the prince. It would be good to take this opportunity to clear up misunderstandings. She said she would read it, and Henry gave her a letter in which Edith thanked Ayla for saving her, and asked her to invite her to her duchy. Ayla said that a little later, she would have to send an invitation to the castle to Miss Neveline. Then she wondered if there were other letters she should look at, and Henry said that the prince had also sent her a letter. Lena asked why His Highness had written her a letter. Ayla replied that he probably wanted to thank her for saving her. But before going to an audience with the emperor, she will have to meet with Edith. After a while, the circumstances of the incident in the garden of the imperial palace were revealed. They say that a dark sorcerer stole the appearance of the servant, and the poor servant was found tied up in the closet. The report also indicated that it seemed that the sorcerer had entered the emperor's palace, taking advantage of the relaxed atmosphere of the banquet. It became difficult to know who was behind him, because the sorcerer immediately took poison and committed suicide, but Ayla is sure that this is somehow related to the same sorcerers who attacked Etherton. It probably won't be easy. The dark mages who had been hiding until now suddenly began to appear one after another. One tried to kill the prince, and the other was caused by a monster on the Duke's property. She wondered if it would be better to talk to Claude about it instead of dealing with it herself. Ayla wanted to talk about the incident with her father, but Claude interrupted her and said that if it was about her father, then she was not obliged to tell him anything. She was surprised that he was not trying to get the information out, and then thought that maybe he knew that she did not get along with her father, and therefore he was trying to keep an eye on her. So she decided to ask him directly if he knew that she had a bad relationship with her father. Claude replied that he supposed that to some extent. Ayla thought that he did not talk to Ayla, but he was able to understand. Ayla asked him how he understood this, and Claude said that immediately after the wedding. The count paid a visit, but she threw him out without letting him cross the threshold. Ayla understood why the count had only sent letters for a whole year, and then asked what Claude thought of her father. Claude simply replied that he dislikes anyone she dislikes. Ayla thought his answer was quite sweet, and then asked if that was the only reason. Then Claude first apologized, and then said that he actually disliked her father. Claude explained that he hated greedy people. Ayla asked if her father supported the emperor, and Claude replied that he was in the emperor's faction. Now it was clear why her father mentioned it. This means that he sent her here to use her to transmit information about the ducal family to the emperor. Since the duke has remained neutral so far, it is likely to be highly sought-after information. Then Ayla asked him to listen to her and asked him to understand her correctly, and Claude replied that she could tell him everything because he believed her. She said that her father demanded information about him. Of course, she never gave him anything and didn't even have that thought. Claude calmly replied that there were always many people who wanted information about him, and knowing how greedy her father was, he was not surprised. Therefore, it is not surprising that there are those who try to force information about the house from within. Claude said it wasn't her fault. He asked her not to worry and thanked her for telling him everything. Ayla thanked him for his trust. Ayla added that there was something strange about his request, specifically that her father spoke as if it were a personal order from the emperor. This surprised Claude. Ayla said that maybe her father was just trying to intimidate her this way. But Claude replied that this has logic, because his family has been neutral for a long time. So maybe the emperor is also interested in receiving information, or he might also be thinking of finding her weak point and bringing her to his faction side. Ayla thought that maybe the reason for Claude's treason was aversion to the emperor, and not towards the prince. It seems this is understandable. Claude asked if she hadn't told him before that she shouldn't torment herself alone with such emotional experiences. He said that if her father bothered her again, she should tell him, and he would take care of him. And he added that since he was her father, he wouldn't harm him. Ayla thanked him and asked if Henry had told him that they were expected at the Imperial Palace in a few days. Claude replied that he would prepare everything for the trip. A few days later, at Ayla's invitation, Edith Nevelin arrived at the Reinhardt residence. Edith no longer looked at Ayla and thanked her for the invitations. Ayla replied that she was grateful that Edith deigned to approach her and offered to sit more comfortably. Edith praised Ayla's tea choice. For some reason, she became very polite, and this only confused Ayla. But then she asked Ayla to tell the servant to leave. Ayla did just that, and Edith said she needed to tell her something urgently. At first, she thanked her for saving her life, and then suddenly fell silent. Ayla wondered about the reason why she wanted to talk to her, and said that there was a misunderstanding between her and Edith. To be more precise, Ayla feels nothing for the prince, and at the banquet the prince spoke to her only because he recognized the relic on her hand. So Ayla asked again to understand her correctly. Moreover, she has a husband, Claude. Edith said she was aware that the Duke loved her. Even when the sorcerer appeared, the Duke protected her with his body, not having any weapons in his hands. But the most important thing is that the Duke's gaze on her is very similar to the way she looks at the prince. Ayla considered Claude's feelings as mere obsession and asked Edith if she thought he loved her. And Edith replied that this is how a person in love looks. Claude seems to be head over heels in love with Ayla, something Ayla decided to put aside for the future. Ayla said she wanted her to know that she felt nothing for the first prince. Edith said she understood, but she hadn't come all this way to discuss such an easy topic. And suddenly, Edith warned Ayla to be careful of the emperor. Ayla wanted to ask her more about this, but Edith stood up and said that was all she could say, and that she was leaving now. Already in the evening, Ayla lay in bed and thought that she would soon have to pay a visit to the emperor, which made her anxious. She wondered why Edith told her this. Maybe because she was the owner of the relic, about which the prophecy was written, or because she was grateful for saving her. But can she trust this word? And most importantly is Claude. If he really loves her, what should she do in the future? However, everyday thoughts visit her that she wants to stay by his side. But she decided not to focus on this. And it was at that moment that Claude called her room. He entered and said he wanted to talk to her. So, Ayla suggested that they walk together in the garden, because she herself was mentally confused. And a walk might help her. Claude said that after Miss Edith's visit, she was constantly in her room. Ayla replied that she wanted to put her thoughts in order. She asked him if he had said anything unpleasant. Ayla replied that there was none of that, and answered that only one sentence bothered her. Ayla said that Edith warned her about the emperor. Claude said that it was probably because the Nevelin family supports the aristocratic faction, and maybe she warned him about the emperor to attract him to the nobility's side. But don't bother too much with those thoughts. Even if there is evidence, Claude does not believe that the information structure of the Nevelin family is not that good. Yes, she wouldn't have told him to be careful of the emperor without having solid evidence at hand. But if he knew beforehand that she comes from a family that supports the aristocrats, he wouldn't have to worry. But then, why is the prince dating her? Edith belongs to a family that represents the interests of the aristocratic faction, and it is a known fact that the two factions oppose each other. Therefore, a more suitable partner for the prince would be a girl from a family belonging to the imperial faction. Maybe the reason is that the novel's goal was to emphasize the so-called fateful love that is capable of overcoming any obstacle. It is very unusual for the prince to have a friendly relationship with Edith from the noble faction. Apparently, this is the true destiny. Claude said that because of this, there was a lot of talk. It was said that the prince was going to negotiate with the aristocratic faction through his friendly relationship with Nevelin. But of course, since he acted like an idiot, the rumors quickly disappeared. Apparently, he was really playing the fool. So, Ayla asked when they would roughly make a visit to the imperial palace, and Claude suggested going there tomorrow. Claude asked her if her mood had improved. Ayla was surprised and asked him if he had really been worried about her all this time. She dismissed why he was worried, and Claude replied that for him, she was the most important person. In this world, nothing matters to him except her. Ayla touched his cheek, and Claude leaned closer. But when the moment for their first kiss came, Claude backed away and apologized for crossing the line. Ayla replied that her soul is very light now when she is by his side, and that her mood simply cannot deteriorate. Claude replied that when he is by her side, He forgets everything in the world, as if all memories and thoughts suddenly leave him. What is this feeling that she neglected during all the time she spent with him? The desire continues to grow in her heart, and now she knows for sure that she feels something for Claude. A strong desire to possess, a desire to have all of Claude. It is difficult to ignore this feeling. Claude noticed that her face was red and asked if she had caught a cold. Then he accompanied Ayla to her room, said goodnight to her and left, leaving Ayla alone in her room. Ayla admitted that she was in love with Claude, the man who would organize a rebellion and would become the cause of her death. She realized that she no longer wanted to leave him because she wanted to keep seeing Claude's silver hair every day, because she would like to keep looking at his golden eyes, which looked like molten gold bars. She wants to be near him because she loves him. She would like to be together forever. This is the beginning of her love, as strong as a fever, and so she woke up. Ayla couldn't close her eyes all night because these feelings cannot be easily let go. If she cannot give up her feelings, then she will have one option left. She will need to win Claude's heart. After all, in any case, her goal is to change the plot of the novel. Compared to such a difficult goal, the plan to win Claude's heart seems quite feasible. If everything goes well, then she will be able to save his life and win his love. She decided to win his heart at all costs. Ayla called Lena and told her that she wanted her to pay special attention to her outfit today. As she asked Ayla, Lena worked hard and Ayla looked luxurious. Lena said she dressed like that because she was going to the imperial castle. Ayla replied that this was one of the reasons. Lost in thought, she completely forgot about the audience with the emperor. This bracelet has been in her hand for several days, so she no longer notices it, and he is the savior to whom she owes her life, and the main culprit for her troubles. Suddenly, someone knocked on her door, and Lena said it must be the Duke, and then wished her a good trip. And now the time has come to meet Claude. She opened the door, and Claude asked her if she was ready to go to the imperial palace. Today, Ayla is very nervous. When she looks into his eyes, Claude took her hand and kissed her, telling her she looks beautiful. Then they approached the emperor, and Claude told him that they had welcomed him and wished him a long reign. Ayla said it was a great honor for them to be here at his invitation. When he met her at the prince's birthday banquet, he showed no interest in her. The emperor said that the duchess's actions last time impressed him greatly, and besides, she turned out to be the owner of the relic. She thanked him, and the emperor said there was no need for such expressions, because she was the heroine of his family, and he would never forget that she saved the prince's life. If the emperor really ordered the count to give him information about the duke, but she feels no hostility, she even became a heroine. In this case, maybe the count was simply lying, or the emperor was just pretending. He said that her merit was incredibly important, so she would receive the property of the emerald mine in Imelta. Ayla was very surprised by the emperor's kindness and thanked him for such a generous gift. Did he really want to go above and beyond and try to build friendly relations? The emperor said he had another gift for his wife and asked her to step out. Claude reluctantly left, bowing to him. The butler presented the box, and the emperor told her to open it. The necklace, made of aquamarine, is the same one he gave to the empress. Ayla asked if it was possible to give her what Her Majesty the Empress had. The emperor replied that he would give it to her without regret, and added that he did not have time to properly prepare the gift for her, because she already had the most precious stone. Although his gift is incomparable to Princess Shai's diamond, it is the necklace the empress wore. So the emperor asked her to accept the gift. Ayla was worried that chaos would ensue if this reached the princess and the prince. But still, she thanked him for the gift. The emperor said that this was a reward from the imperial court for saving his relatives from threats. It turns out, he means he will give his wife's jewelry to the owner of the relic as payment for saving his son. Moreover, if she accepts the gift, it will be difficult for the ducal family to make an enemy of the ruling family. But maybe the prince and princess will hate her for this gift. But the emperor made it clear that he would never listen to her excuses. So she accepted his gift and said she would protect it like the apple of her eye. The emperor said that maybe she doesn't know it, but he really likes the precious stone adorning the necklace. It has a good meaning. Aquamarine symbolizes eternal youth and happiness, and at the same time, it is believed to bring hope. In health, Ayla said it symbolized happiness, and the emperor said he hoped the necklace would bring her happiness. Then he asked her in a spooky tone if she was going to accept his proposal. He said he wasn't exposing it, but was only interested because he wanted to befriend the owner of the relic. That is mentioned in the prophecy. It turns out the count was not lying. The emperor really asked for information about his family. He really turned out to be a sinister man. Ayla said that, as a member of the ducal family, she would like to be loyal to his imperial majesty. Then she left quickly, and Claude, who was waiting for her, greeted her cheerfully, and Ayla thought she needed to protect her husband from the dark sorcerers by all means. She said she didn't like his gift because she received the necklace of the deceased empress. Ayla wanted to tell Claude something, but suddenly the prince shouted her name, and Ayla greeted him. The prince asked permission to talk to her for a little while. Ayla asked how long it would take. The prince replied it would only be a minute. He said he heard that his majesty had rewarded the courage shown last time. Ayla wondered if he came to make sure that his father had gifted her a necklace that belonged to his late mother. But the prince said that he also wanted to repay her for saving his life, and showed her the ruby ring. Ayla said that she had already received enough reward for her services, but the prince interrupted her by saying that it might be useful. He said that this is an artifact, a very rare and hard-to-make magical object. Moreover, a person who possesses such an object can use the special magical power it contains. Claude, who had been watching silently until now, asked him if he wanted to tell her that he would give it to his wife. The prince said that it protects the body from poison and physical harm. Something like this would be useful for their mothers. He added that if poison is detected, the gem will break and the magic will be directed to her body. And during a physical attack, the artifact creates a shield. Of course, since she already possesses the relic, magical attacks or monster attacks. But the ring will be able to protect against physical attacks and poison. Ayla did not know if his intentions were pure, but the artifact was too useful to give up. And Ayla wanted to test the ring in the palace. So she thanked him for the gift and asked why he thought someone would try to kill her. The prince remembered that dark sorcerer. And moreover, there are many who will not leave the owner of the relic alone. In the carriage, Ayla said that, when she saw the prince today, it seemed to her that in front of her was a completely different person. Ayla insisted that no matter how much she thought about it, it seemed to her that the emperor had really asked the count to get him information about his family. After leaving the audience hall, the emperor tried to test the waters, but she refused. Claude said he had no doubts about her. Claude said he assumed that such a possibility existed, but he couldn't even imagine that his assumptions about the emperor would turn out to be true. He asked the emperor to ask him directly about his intentions. Ayla replied that she was trying to find out which side they were on. Ayla was afraid that he would start a riot because of this, but she was determined not to leave Claude under any circumstances. But she still had to tell him. The next day, Ayla saw Claude again, and he asked her what she had come for. And Ayla said she was working tirelessly. Moreover, he sits in his office all the time, and that's why he missed her. Claude said that he also wanted to see her. She invited him to tea, and at the table she told him that he was very busy, that as soon as they returned to the house, they could only find him in his office. Claude said he was investigating the incident involving the dark sorcerer, but he hadn't found any clues yet. Moreover, the emperor is trying to interfere in the affairs of the duchy. Ayla said that neither he nor her father received much information due to her refusal. Claude replied that there are people who are trying to find something out within the ducal residence. In the original, when Claude was about to lead his army to the imperial palace, but the prince saw through him and attacked first. It's no wonder Claude knew about the spies, but still organized the rebellion. She wondered if there was any reason to take such a risk. Claude asked if she noticed anything strange about the ring. Ayla replied that the mage examined it and said that it was indeed an artifact. Apparently the prince did not lie. Claude said that she didn't like the emperor's gift, but she liked the prince's gift. Ayla replied that artifacts with protective effects can always be useful, and besides, the emperor's gift is a burden. When she returned, she immediately hid it in the dresser and hoped she could return it to the prince or the princess, and Claude said he was a little annoyed. Claude said that she seemed to like the gift from the emperor's son more than his, but Ayla immediately rejected this hypothesis. She said she had no idea that she liked artifacts, and that from today on, she would order a bunch of them to be collected. Ayla feared that he would buy all the jewelry again, like last time, so she said everything was fine, that she didn't need many artifacts. It seems her bracelet started to glow again, and she thought she should visit the temple, and she told Claude this, and finding artifacts is not a difficult task, so Claude will not be bothered. When they arrived, those same grumpy men started happily gathering around Ayla. Ayla said she wanted to meet with Serena, and that she would also need materials about the bracelet. Serena came, and as always was happy to see Ayla and thanked her for visiting her temple. She brought materials about the bracelet, and Serena said they still didn't know how to remove it, and she assumed that after the chaos, the bracelet would fall from her hands. Ayla was sad because her head was full of thoughts about how she would survive. And Claude, and now she would also have to think about saving the world. At the very least, they should have provided the option to remove and put on the bracelet whenever one wanted. Claude handed her a document. It said the same thing she heard from Serena before. Ayla asked what this meant, and Serena asked her to keep reading the document. The owner of the relic is an apostle, the chosen one who, with the help of divine power, will correct the chaos of the world. Ayla said she didn't even know how to use the power of the relic. Siren replied that she would find out everything because she was chosen, and Serena invited her to pray in a special room before leaving. Maybe the goddess would give her a new revelation. Ayla didn't believe it much, but there was a relic in that place, so maybe she would find new information. She returned to the same place and felt that nothing had changed. Ayla still doubted that she would find any clue, and she decided to pray for real. And as soon as she sat down and started praying, she heard that same voice. Upon opening her eyes, Ayla found herself in a completely different place, and it was that voice that called her before the barrier was destroyed. Then a man appeared in front of her and told her that he wanted to talk to her, and thought it would be better if he brought her here. Ayla asked who he was, and the boy said that he was the creator of this world. It turned out that it was not a goddess, but a god. She said directly that he doesn't look like his statue at all, and to be honest, Siren looks more like him. He replied that no one had ever seen his true face, so they depicted him as they imagined. And the little mermaid, whom Ayla especially loves, realized that the mermaid was right, that since childhood she had been endowed with divine power. Ayla asked how she could trust him, and the boy replied that he thought about who had transported her to that space. Then he called her real name, Becky, and it turned out that he was the one who sent her to this world. But Ayla still couldn't believe it, and asked him how he knew her name, and he repeated that he called her to this dimension. Siren must have said she felt it coming from her. It was because he placed her soul in Ayla's body. He also gave her his power, so that she could become the owner of the bracelet. And Siren felt it. The divine power of the priests is only a part of what he possesses. Ayla asked if what was said was true, then why did he bring her here? Why did he turn her into Ayla? She seemed very angry, and the boy replied that he thought she really liked Claude. Ayla started shouting that he was the one who destroyed the barrier, because he disappeared when he called her by her name. But he replied that she did it herself, because she was the chosen one, although he did it so that the bracelet would only reach her. Those who possess dark forces summoned creatures from the demonic realm, creating a schism. He chose her as the one who will close the rift in the world, because he assumed that she would be able to save the world. But such an excuse did not calm Ayla at all, but on the contrary, only made her even angrier. Ayla thought that if he wanted her to save the world, then he should do it himself and not beat around the bush. And around. This infuriated Ayla so much that she wanted to hit him at least once, and asked if there was another reason why he had called her here. He said there really was a reason, but although he couldn't tell her, Ayla told him to deal with the dark forces himself. But he replied that he had already made a great effort to stop the chaos, and that his call here was one of the links in his plan. And didn't she say herself that she wanted to save Claude? Claude's fate is deeply connected with those who create discord in this world. So, if he wants to save him, she must close the rift that has formed here. Ayla shouted how Claude could be connected to dark sorcerers, but suddenly, the white aura turned dark, and he said that apparently it would be difficult to continue their conversation, because his forces had weakened. Ayla opened her eyes again, returned, and started shouting that she should have answered his questions before he left. She wondered what happened to her original body and how the novel connected to this world. She still had too many questions, but the meeting with Rajas was not useless. She didn't learn anything about the summoned monsters and the incident at the banquet, and she left the prayer room. Claude was already waiting for her and greeted her cheerfully, and Ayla thought she needed to protect her husband from the dark sorcerers by all means.